Derek Hansen's boot connected with Jordan Price's stomach with the kind of force reserved for suspects who'd already been labeled guilty. The sound, a dull, sickening thud, echoed through the marble lobby of Sterling Trust Bank, like a judge's gavel slamming down on an unjust verdict. Jordan's body folded her knees, buckling, her breath exploding from her lungs in a gasp that was half shock, half agony. She hit the floor hard, palms slapping against cold stone, and that's when her purse strap snapped. Everything spilled. Keys scattered like dropped coins. Her phone skittered across the marble. And then, something small and leather, edged in gold, slid silently toward the feet of an elderly woman who'd been watching in horror. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button right now. This story is going to take you places you won't believe, and I need you with me until the very end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's get into what happened before that kick. And trust me, you're not ready for this. Jordan Price had woken up that Tuesday morning the same way she'd woken up every morning for the past 3 years, alone. The other side of the bed was still made, still untouched, the pillow still holding the shape it had held since the last time Claire had laid her head there. 3 years since the hit and run. 3 years since the driver had fled and never been found. 3 years since Jordan had promised herself she'd spend every remaining day fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. She didn't linger on it. Couldn't. Not if she wanted to function. The coffee was bitter and black, the way she'd learned to drink it during her first field assignment in Newark, when sugar and cream were luxuries nobody had time for. She stood at her kitchen counter in her small Chicago apartment, scanning the Cascade Holdings file on her tablet. $200 million. Gone. Funneled through shell companies' offshore accounts and one specific institution that kept appearing in the transaction log, Sterling Trust Bank, Michigan Avenue branch. Her phone buzzed. Marcus Reed, her partner, her friend. The only person at the bureau who understood why she worked the way she did, relentlessly, obsessively, like every case was personal. "You're going in today?" Marcus asked without preamble. 9:30, Jordan confirmed. "Just a documentation request. Should be straightforward." "Jordan," Marcus's tone shifted. That particular combination of concern and caution that meant he was about to say something she wouldn't want to hear. "That branch has flagged before. Nothing official, but I've heard things. Be careful." "I'm always careful." "No, you're always right. That's different. Being right doesn't keep you safe." Jordan smiled despite herself. "I'll call you when I'm done." She hung up before he could argue further. By 9:15, she was parking her car 3 blocks from Sterling Trust, her credentials tucked inside her purse alongside her service weapon, which she rarely carried during financial investigations, but kept accessible out of habit. The October air was crisp, the kind of cold that hadn't yet turned brutal, but promised to. Chicago was beautiful this time of year, all changing leaves and sharp blue skies that made you forget just for a moment about the darkness people were capable of. The bank's lobby was exactly what she expected. High ceilings, marble floors polished to a shine that could double as a mirror. Soft instrumental music piped through invisible speakers, the kind designed to make you feel calm while they took your money. A dozen customers scattered throughout the space, a young mother with a stroller, an elderly couple holding hands at the new accounts desk, 2 college-aged kids arguing quietly near the ATMs, and behind a security desk near the entrance, a man who looked like he'd been carved from stone and rage. Derek Hansen. Jordan didn't know his name yet, but she clocked him immediately. 40-something, buzz cut going gray. Arms crossed over a chest that had probably been impressive 20 years ago and was now just thick. The kind of posture that screamed former cop, the kind of eyes that tracked movement with suspicion instead of curiosity. He was watching her before she even reached the teller line. Jordan joined the queue, 5 people ahead. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through emails, projected calm, professional, unremarkable, just another customer on a Tuesday morning. Except Derek Hansen didn't see her that way. She could feel his stare, heavy, assessing. The way you'd watch someone you'd already decided didn't belong. The line moved slowly. A woman ahead of her complained about overdraft fees, her voice rising with each sentence, until the teller, a young Latina woman whose name tag read Maria, apologized with the kind of practiced patience that came from doing it 100 times a day. Jordan waited, checked her watch, thought about Claire the way she always did when time stretched too long. Claire had hated waiting, called it the universe's way of testing whether you're paying attention. I'm paying attention, baby. I always am. When Jordan finally reached the window, Maria's smile was genuine but cautious. Good morning. How can I help you? Jordan placed her driver's license on the counter. I need to request quarterly reconciliation reports for specific accounts, transactions over $10,000 for the past 18 months. Maria's smile faltered. Just slightly. Just enough. Oh, That's not something we usually process at the teller window. Can I ask what this is for? Jordan kept her voice even, friendly. Account verification. I'm happy to complete whatever authorization forms you need. Maria picked up the ID, studied it longer than necessary. Her eyes flicked from the photo to Jordan's face and back again, like she was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't quite fit. Let me get my manager, Maria said. Just one moment. She disappeared through a door behind the teller line, taking Jordan's ID with her. Jordan stepped aside to let the next customer through a businessman, already pulling out his phone, irritated at being made to wait. She positioned herself near a marble pillar, casual but watchful. That's when Derek Hansen moved. Not toward her, not yet, but he stood, adjusted his belt, spoke into the radio clipped near his shoulder. Quiet words Jordan couldn't make out but didn't need to. She'd seen this dance before. The alert, the preparation. The way security personnel coordinated when they'd decided someone was a threat. She pulled out her phone, typed a message to Marcus at Sterling Trust. Experiencing unusual delay on standard documentation request. Nothing concerning yet, just noting it. His response came back immediately. Want me to come? Not yet. We'll update. Behind the teller line through the plexiglass partition, Jordan could see Maria talking to a woman in a gray pantsuit. 30s, dark hair pulled back, professional. The woman assistant manager probably glanced toward Jordan. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second before the woman looked away, her expression carefully neutral. Then she sat down at a computer and started typing. Not a quick email, a long message. Her fingers moved fast, urgent, like she was explaining something that required detail. 20 seconds, 30, 45. Jordan's internal alarm system, honed over a decade of fieldwork, started whispering, "This isn't standard procedure. This is something else." The woman stopped typing, hit send, stood, said something to Maria that made the younger woman's face tighten with worry. Then she disappeared from view. 5 minutes passed, then 7, then 10. Jordan checked her watch. 9:43. 14 minutes since she'd made her request. The businessman finished his transaction. Left. The college kids withdrew cash. Left. The elderly couple completed their paperwork. Left. New customers came in. Were helped. Left. Jordan remained. Waiting. Derek Hansen remained. Watching. At 9:51, a man emerged from the back offices. Tall, mid-50s, expensive suit that screamed, "I make more than you and want you to know it." Graying at the temples in that distinguished way that white men got praised for, and everyone else just looked old. Confident stride, the kind of walk that came from never being questioned. His name tag read, Philip Warren, Branch Manager. He held Jordan's ID in his hand. But he didn't walk toward her. He walked to Derek Hansen's security desk, leaned in close, spoke quietly. Jordan couldn't hear the words, but she saw Hansen's expression change, saw his shoulders go back, saw something pass between them, some wordless communication that set every nerve in Jordan's body on edge. Then Warren pulled out his radio, pressed the button. His voice carried just slightly across the lobby. Possible situation at window 3. Customer making unusual requests, applying enhanced protocols. Enhanced protocols. Jordan's jaw tightened. She knew that phrase, had seen it in depositions and corporate emails introduced as evidence in the coded language companies used when they wanted plausible deniability. Enhanced protocols meant, we're treating this person as suspicious without saying why. It meant, we've decided they don't belong here. It meant, ma'am, Jordan turned. Philip Warren had approached, his hand extended, his smile already in place. Professional, practiced, the smile of a man who'd negotiated his way out of uncomfortable situations his entire career. I'm Philip Warren, branch manager. I apologize for the wait. Why don't we step into my office and discuss your request? Jordan didn't shake his hand. I've been waiting 24 minutes for a standard documentation request, she said calmly. There's no reason to move this to your office. I'm happy to wait here while you process the authorization. Warren's smile tightened at the corners, microscopic, but Jordan saw it. I understand your frustration, but given the nature of your request, I need to verify a few things first. It's bank policy. I'm sure you understand. What needs to be verified? The purpose of your request. I already provided that information to your teller. Account verification. Yes, but that's quite vague and it's accurate. I'm not required to provide additional detail for a standard disclosure request that I'm legally entitled to as an account holder. Warren's smile disappeared entirely. His eyes flicked past Jordan to Derek Hansen, who'd moved closer. Not obvious, not threatening, just present. A wall of muscle and authority positioned 10 feet away. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me to my office, Warren said. His tone had shifted, still professional, but with an edge underneath, the edge that said, this isn't optional. Am I being detained? Jordan asked. The question landed like a stone in still water. Warren blinked. Detained? No, of course not. I just think a private conversation would be more. Then I'm declining. I'll wait here for the documentation I requested. Warren's face flushed. He opened his mouth to respond, but Derek Hansen spoke first. Ma'am, you need to step outside. Jordan turned to face him. Really look at him. His jaw was clenched. His hands had balled into fists at his sides. His neck was red, flushed with the kind of anger that wasn't about her request for bank documents. This was something deeper, something uglier. I'm conducting legitimate business, Jordan said evenly. I have no reason to step outside. You're making staff uncomfortable. By requesting documents I'm legally entitled to, by the way you're acting, the questions you're asking, the attitude. There it was, the word that always came eventually. Attitude. Jordan kept her voice level. I haven't displayed any attitude. I've been patient. I've been polite. I've waited 26 minutes for a simple authorization. If anyone should be uncomfortable, it's me. Other customers were watching now. The young mother with the stroller had paused mid-conversation with a banker. One of the college kids, an Asian American young man with kind eyes, had his phone out, not recording yet, but ready. Derek Hansen took a step closer. Where are you from? The question hit Jordan like a slap. Excuse me? Where are you from? Each word separate, deliberate, heavy with implication. Jordan felt something cold and familiar settle in her chest. The weight she'd carried her entire life, the weight every black person in America carried, the knowledge that no matter how educated you were, how professional, how right, there would always be someone who looked at you and saw a threat instead of a person. I live in Chicago, she said quietly. That's not what I asked. The lobby had gone quieter. The soft instrumental music suddenly felt obscene, cheerful, oblivious to what was happening. I was born in Atlanta, Jordan said. Her voice had flattened, all the warmth gone. Raised in Detroit. Lived in Chicago for 6 years. Is that sufficient? Derek Hansen's jaw worked. A muscle twitched beneath his skin. See, that's the attitude I'm talking about, he said. Behind Jordan, someone gasped. Soft. Shocked. Philip Warren stepped forward, hands up, palms out. Okay, everyone, just needs to take a breath here. Derek, I'll handle this. Ma'am, if you'll just... My name is Jordan Price, Jordan interrupted. Not ma'am, not you people. My name is Jordan Price, and I came here to request banking documents I'm legally entitled to. That's it. That's all I did. And now I'm being questioned about where I'm from like that's somehow relevant to quarterly reconciliation reports. You're making this into something it's not, Warren said quickly. Am I? Jordan's voice was quiet, dangerous. Because from where I'm standing, your security guard just asked me where I'm from, not my account number, not my social security number for verification, where I'm from. And we both know exactly what that question really means. Warren's face went pale. That's a very serious accusation. It's a very serious situation. Silence. 5 seconds. 10. Derek Hansen broke it. Open your bag, he said. The words hung in the air like a threat. Jordan stared at him. That's not a lawful request. I'm head of security. I have the right to ensure everyone's safety. You have no probable cause to search my personal belongings. Probable cause. Hansen's voice rose. You sound like a lawyer. What are you hiding? The college kid's phone was up now, recording, the red dot glowing like a warning light. I'm not hiding anything, Jordan said. I'm exercising my Fourth Amendment rights. If you want to search my bag, you'll need to provide a lawful reason. The lawful reason is you're acting suspicious. I'm requesting banking documents. You're refusing to cooperate. I'm refusing to be illegally searched. Hansen's breathing had changed. Faster, shallow, his chest rising and falling visibly beneath his uniform shirt. His hands opening and closing at his sides. Open, close, open, close. Jordan saw it, recognized it. The moment before violence. The moment when a man who'd been challenged decided that words weren't enough anymore. Derek! Warren's voice had gone up half an octave. Warning, pleading. Let me handle this. But Derek Hansen wasn't listening. You people, he said loud enough for everyone to hear, always think the rules don't apply. You walk in here like you own the place, making demands, causing problems, then crying discrimination when someone finally calls you out. The silence that followed was absolute. You people. The young mother near the new accounts desk had her hand over her mouth. The college kid filming had gone pale. Behind the teller line, Maria was crying silent tears streaming down her face. And Jordan felt that cold weight in her chest expand, fill her lungs, make breathing an effort. But her voice when she spoke was steady. I'm going to ask you one time to rethink what you just said. One time to remember that you're on camera, that you have witnesses, that what you do next will define the rest of your life. Hansen's response was to reach for her arm. Don't, Jordan said. His fingers closed around her bicep, tight, hard enough to bruise. I said, don't. He twisted. Her arm rotated. Pain shot up to her shoulder, sharp and immediate. Her body turned involuntarily, trying to relieve the pressure, trying to protect the joint. You're assaulting me, Jordan said. Her voice was still calm, still professional, but there was steel underneath now. Remove your hand or you will face federal charges. Federal. The word should have mattered, should have made him stop, should have made him think. It didn't. Derek Hansen yanked. Hard, used her momentum against her, spun her toward the exit. Her feet stumbled trying to keep up. Her shoulders screamed. She didn't fight back, wouldn't give him the excuse, but her free hand instinctively moved toward his grip. Not to strike, to stabilize, to prevent injury. He read it as resistance. Don't fight me, he growled. I'm not— Everyone stay back, Hansen shouted to the crowd. Subject is non-compliant. She's not doing anything, the college kid yelled. She's just standing there. But Hansen had committed now, had crossed the line, and men like Derek Hansen didn't back down, didn't admit mistakes, didn't apologize. They doubled down. He pulled harder. Jordan's shoes scraped against marble. The sound was awful, high-pitched, wrong. She had a choice. Let him dislocate her shoulder, or drop to her knees. She chose her knees. The crowd gasped, sharp, horrified. Stop, someone shouted. Hansen didn't stop. Jordan's knees hit marble. The impact sent pain shooting through her legs. She felt her purse strap pulling, felt it straining, felt the leather starting to give. Open your bag, Hansen demanded again. Now! You don't have— That's when he kicked her. Not a tap. Not a push with his boot. A full, deliberate kick to her stomach with the kind of force meant to incapacitate, to hurt, to punish. The air exploded from Jordan's lungs. Her body folded, every muscle contracted. Pain, white-hot, nauseating, radiated from her abdomen through her chest, her ribs, her back. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel. Her hands hit the floor, palms down, trying to hold herself up, trying to process what had just happened. The purse strap snapped, everything spilled: keys, phone, wallet, lipstick, tissues, pen, and a small leather credential case edged in gold that slid across polished marble like it had been waiting its whole existence for this exact moment. It came to rest at the feet of an elderly black woman in a purple dress who'd been standing near the pillar watching in horror, her hand pressed to her chest like she could physically hold her breaking heart in place. She looked down, bent slowly, arthritis making the movement painful, picked it up. Her fingers opened the leather fold, and her face changed in a way that made everyone who saw it stop breathing. "Oh my God," she whispered. Derek Hansen still had his knee pressed between Jordan's shoulder blades, still had her face down on the floor, still hadn't looked, hadn't seen, was too focused on winning, on dominating, on proving that when he said down, people stayed down. The elderly woman's voice rose, stronger, louder. "Oh my God!" Hansen looked up. "Ma'am, step back. This doesn't concern—" "She's FBI," the woman said. The words didn't register at first, like they were in a foreign language. Hansen blinked. "What?" The woman held up the credential case. Her hands were shaking so badly, the gold trim caught the overhead lights in stuttering flashes. "This," she said, her voice breaking, "is a Federal Bureau of Investigation badge, special agent." Her eyes moved from the badge to Hansen's face. "You just kicked an FBI agent in the stomach. We all watched you do it." The lobby erupted, not with screams, with gasps, with curses, with the sound of a dozen phones being pulled out simultaneously, with the collective intake of breath from people who'd just witnessed something that couldn't be unseen, couldn't be undone. Derek Hansen's knee lifted off Jordan's back. His face had gone from red to white in seconds. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. Philip Warren, who'd been standing frozen, uselessly watching his security guard commit a federal crime, made a sound like he'd been punched in the chest. His hand came to his mouth. His eyes went wide. "Vic," he whispered. "What did you—" Jordan pushed herself up, slowly, every muscle protesting, her stomach on fire where Hansen's boot had connected, her ribs screaming, her shoulder aching from being wrenched. But she pushed through it, got to her hands and knees first, paused, let the dizziness pass, let the nausea settle. Then she stood. It took everything she had, every ounce of training, every moment of discipline, every memory of Claire saying, "You're stronger than they'll ever understand, baby. Show them." She stood straight, shoulders back, chin up, blood dripped from her split lip where her face had hit the marble. Her jacket was torn at the shoulder. Her hair had come loose from its professional bun, but she stood like a federal agent, like someone who'd been trained to project authority, even when authority had just put its boot in her gut. She looked at Derek Hansen, really looked at him, memorized his face, the fear in his eyes, the way his hands were shaking, the sweat beading on his forehead. Then she walked carefully, painfully, but under her own power, to where the elderly woman stood holding her credentials. "Thank you," Jordan said softly. The woman's eyes were wet. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry this happened to you." Jordan took the badge, clipped it to her belt, the motion deliberate, final. Then she pulled out her phone. Her hands were steady. No shake, no tremor. She scrolled to Marcus Reed's contact, pressed call. It rang once. "Marcus," she said. Her voice was quiet, controlled, the voice of an agent reporting a crime. "I need you at Sterling Trust Bank, Michigan Avenue. Bring forensics. Call Civil Rights Division. I've been assaulted during an official inquiry. Multiple witnesses. Video evidence. Subject is bank security. Scene needs to be secured immediately. A pause. Then Marcus's voice sharp with fury and fear. How bad? Kicked in the stomach. Ribs possibly bruised or cracked. Functional but need medical documentation. Subject used racial slurs. Regional manager was complicit. I need this by the book, Marcus. Everything by the book. 12 minutes, Marcus said. Don't let anyone leave. Don't let anyone touch anything. Jordan ended the call. Looked at Derek Hansen, who'd backed up against a pillar, still staring like he couldn't process what was happening. Looked at Philip Warren, whose expensive suit suddenly looked cheap, whose confident walk had disappeared, who looked like a man watching his entire career collapse in real time. Then she looked at the crowd, at the college kid still recording, at Maria crying behind the plexiglass, at the young mother holding her child closer, at the elderly woman in purple still standing beside her, like a witness who refused to look away. And Jordan spoke, not loud, didn't need to be. The authority in her voice did the work volume couldn't. Special Agent Jordan Claire Price, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Financial Crimes Unit. She paused. Let that sink in. Let everyone understand what they'd just witnessed. No one leaves this building. This is now a federal crime scene. FBI is en route. Anyone who attempts to leave will be obstructing a federal investigation. Silence. Then the college kid spoke, his voice shaking but certain. I got it all on video, everything, from the moment he grabbed you. Every word he said, the kick, all of it. Jordan nodded. I'm going to need that phone. It's evidence. You'll get it back after we extract the files. Don't delete anything. Don't post it anywhere yet. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Behind the teller line, a young man in a security uniform, not Hansen, someone younger, early 20s, pale and shaking, stepped forward. I documented everything too, he said, his voice cracked. In my logbook, times, actions, what he said, what you said. I should have stopped him. I'm sorry. I should have done something. What's your name? Jordan asked. Trevor. Trevor Mills. Trevor, you did do something. You documented it. That matters. That's evidence. I'll need to take your statement. Trevor nodded, looked at Hansen with something between disgust and pity. I've seen him do this before. Not the kicking, but the rest. The questions, the way he treats certain customers. I wrote it down every time. I have dates, names, everything. Derek Hansen's face had gone from white to gray. His mouth worked, but no words came out. Philip Warren found his voice. Agent Price, we had no idea who you were. If we'd known... Jordan cut him off with a look. You had my ID, she said. Each word crisp, clear, final. Government issued, current, valid. You had 47 minutes to verify anything you wanted to verify. You chose this. We were following protocol. You were profiling. The accusation landed like a physical blow. Warren's mouth opened, closed. His eyes darted to the phone still recording, to the witnesses, to the security cameras that had captured everything. I want all security footage from the moment I entered this building until now, Jordan continued. Her voice was matter-of-fact, professional. This wasn't a request. I want personnel files for Mr. Hansen and yourself, incident reports for the past 2 years, customer complaints, internal communications, all of it. You can provide it voluntarily, which shows cooperation and good faith, or I can get a warrant. Your choice. But understand that refusing to cooperate with a federal civil rights investigation looks very, very bad for you. Warren swallowed. His throat worked visibly. I'll need to call our legal department. Do that. But the footage from today doesn't leave this building. Those hard drives stay exactly where they are until my team secures them. Touch them, erase them, transfer them, and you add evidence tampering. Are we clear? Warren nodded. He'd lost his voice entirely. Outside, sirens wailed, getting closer. Jordan felt the adrenaline starting to wear off, felt the pain intensifying, felt her ribs screaming with every breath, felt the nausea from the kick still churning in her stomach. But she didn't sit, didn't show weakness, not yet. Not until Marcus Reed walked through those doors with his tactical vest and his federal ID and his fury barely contained, took one look at her torn jacket and split lip and the way she was holding herself, and his jaw clenched so hard she thought he might crack a molar. "Jordan," he said quietly, "I'm okay. You're bleeding. I'm functional." Marcus looked at Derek Hansen, then at Philip Warren, his eyes cold, assessing furious cataloged everything, the scene, the witnesses, the phones still recording. Then he looked back at Jordan. "Tell me everything," he said. And she did. Every word, every action, every moment from when she'd walked through those doors until Derek Hansen's boot had connected with her stomach. When she finished, Marcus pulled out his radio, spoke into it with the clipped efficiency of a federal agent securing a crime scene. "Scene is secured. Multiple witnesses. Video evidence from multiple sources. Subjects are bank security guard Derek Hansen and branch manager Philip Warren. Agent Price sustained injuries from assault, kick to the abdomen, possible rib damage, shoulder strain, facial laceration. Need medical on-site for documentation. Need forensics for evidence collection. And someone get me the special agent in charge. This is going to get big. National news big. We need to be ready." He looked at Jordan again. Something passed between them. Understanding, recognition, the knowledge that this moment, this assault in a bank lobby on a Tuesday morning, was about to become something much bigger than either of them. "You ready for this?" Marcus asked quietly. Jordan thought about Claire, about every person who'd been profiled, brutalized, silenced, about the elderly woman in purple still standing beside her like a guardian angel, about Trevor with his logbook full of evidence, about the college kid with the video that would change everything. "I didn't ask for it," she said. But I'm not backing down." Marcus nodded. "Good. Neither am I." And as the FBI forensic team arrived, as paramedics began documenting her injuries, as Derek Hansen and Philip Warren were separated and told not to communicate, as the witnesses gave their statements and the videos were collected and the security footage was secured, Jordan Price stood in the center of that marble lobby badge on her belt where it belonged and understood that everything had changed. She'd walked in as a federal agent conducting a routine inquiry. She'd been kicked like a criminal. She was standing now as something else entirely, a symbol, a catalyst, a woman who refused to stay down. And the real fight was just beginning. The paramedic's hands were gentle, but Jordan still winced when he pressed against her ribs. Third one down on the left side. The pain was sharp enough to make her vision blur for a second. "That's going to bruise badly," the paramedic said. His name tag read Collins. Young guy, maybe late 20s with kind eyes that had seen too much. "I don't think anything's broken, but you need x-rays to be sure. There could be fractures we can't see." "Document everything," Marcus said from beside her. He hadn't left her side since arriving, hadn't stopped looking at Derek Hansen like he was calculating exactly how much force he could legally use if the man so much as breathed wrong. Every bruise, every mark, photographs, written descriptions, timeline of when symptoms appeared, all of it. Collins nodded, pulled out his camera, started photographing the bruising already forming on Jordan's stomach where Hansen's boot had connected. The imprint was visible, distinct, the kind of evidence that spoke louder than any testimony. Jordan stared at the ceiling while Collins worked. The bank's overhead lights were too bright, made everything feel overexposed, harsh. She could hear voices around her. Trevor giving his statement to an agent she didn't know. The college kid explaining the video to a forensic tech. Maria still crying somewhere behind the teller line. And Derek Hansen silent now, sitting against the far wall under the watchful eye of two federal agents who looked like they were itching for him to give them a reason. "Agent Price," Collins' voice pulled her back. "I'm recommending hospital transport. That kick could have caused internal injuries we can't assess here." "Not yet," Jordan said. Her voice was steady, despite the pain. "I need to give my full statement first. Need to make sure evidence is secured. Then I'll go." Marcus started to protest, but Jordan cut him off with a look. He knew that look. had seen it 100 times over their partnership. The look that said she wasn't asking for permission. "Fine," Marcus said. "But if you collapse, I'm carrying you out of here myself, and I don't care how much you hate it." Jordan almost smiled. Almost. The FBI forensic team was thorough. They photographed everything. The scuff marks on the floor where Jordan had been dragged, the scattered contents of her purse, the exact position where her badge had landed. They collected the video from the college kid whose name turned out to be Tyler Chen, a junior at Northwestern, studying journalism, who couldn't stop shaking as he handed over his phone. "I've never seen anything like that," Tyler said. His voice was quiet, raw. "I mean, I've seen videos online, police brutality, but seeing it happen right in front of me, I couldn't not record it. My mom always told me that silence makes you complicit." "Your mom's right," Jordan said. "And you did the right thing. That video is going to matter, more than you know." Tyler nodded, wiped his eyes. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "How are you so calm he kicked you, like really kicked you, and you're just sitting here talking like it's a regular day?" Jordan was quiet for a moment, thought about how to answer. Thought about all the times she'd had to swallow rage and fear and pain because showing it would be used against her. Thought about Claire telling her that strength wasn't about never breaking. It was about choosing when and how to break in ways that mattered. "I'm not calm," Jordan said finally. "I'm furious. I'm in pain. I'm exhausted. But I learned a long time ago that showing those things to people like Hansen gives them power. So I save it. I process it later, with people I trust. And right now, what matters is making sure he faces consequences. Everything else is secondary." Tyler absorbed that, nodded slowly. "I want to write about this, for the school paper. Maybe bigger publications. Would that be okay?" "It's going to be public anyway," Jordan said. "Once charges are filed, once the investigation goes forward, you might as well tell the story right." Across the lobby, Philip Warren was on his phone, 6th call since the FBI had arrived. His voice kept rising, then dropping like he was being told things he didn't want to hear. Jordan watched him pace, watched him run his hand through his hair, watched him glance at Derek Hansen with something between horror and fury. Marcus followed her gaze. "Corporate's probably losing their minds right now." "Good," Jordan said. "They should be." An agent Jordan didn't recognize approached. Woman in her 40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. Her badge identified her as Special Agent Linda Voss, Civil Rights Division. "Agent Price, I need your statement when you're ready." Jordan nodded. "I'm ready." Voss pulled out a digital recorder, stated the date, time, location. Then she looked at Jordan with the kind of directness that said she'd done this before, had interviewed too many victims, had documented too many assaults. "Start from the beginning. When you entered the bank, every detail you remember." Jordan walked her through it, every moment, every word, every look that had felt wrong, the delays, the questions. Warren's phone call to corporate legal before anything had escalated. Hansen's demand to know where she was from, the grab, the twist, the kick. Her voice stayed level the entire time, professional, clinical, like she was describing someone else's trauma instead of her own. When she finished, Voss stopped the recording, looked at Jordan with something that might have been respect, or might have been sympathy, or might have been both. "That was textbook testimony," Voss said. "Clear, detailed, unemotional. But you don't have to be unemotional with me. Not here." Jordan felt something crack. Just slightly. Just enough. "I came here to do my job," she said quietly, "to request documents for an active fraud investigation. That's it. That's all I did. And I got profiled, got questioned like I didn't belong, got physically assaulted in front of witnesses because a man with a badge and a radio decided I was a threat." She paused. "I've been an agent for 11 years. I've testified in federal court. I've taken down financial criminals who stole millions. And none of that mattered because Derek Hansen looked at me and saw nothing but a black woman asking questions." Voss nodded slowly. "This is going to be a big case. Media coverage, public scrutiny. Are you prepared for that?" I don't know, Jordan said honestly, but I'm not backing down. If I do, then what message does that send? That you can kick an FBI agent and get away with it if she's black, that's not acceptable. No, Voss agreed. It's not. The next hour was a blur of statements and evidence collection and phone calls that got increasingly urgent. Jordan learned that Derek Hansen had been a police officer before joining Sterling Trust, learned that he'd left the force under circumstances that were sealed, learned that Trevor had documented 17 separate incidents over the past year where Hansen had treated customers of color differently than white customers. 17 incidents, 17 people who'd been profiled, questioned, made to feel like criminals for banking while black or brown or anything other than what Derek Hansen thought belonged in his lobby. Marcus found Jordan sitting on a bench near the window, staring out at Michigan Avenue, where protesters were already gathering. Someone had posted Tyler's video online, despite his promise not to. It had gone viral in under an hour. Now there were signs, chants, news vans pulling up. "You see this?" Marcus asked, showing her his phone. The video had been viewed 3 million times. The comments were a war zone. Half the people calling for Hansen's head, half defending him, all of them loud, all of them certain. "It's already out of control," Marcus said. "Good," Jordan replied. "Let it be out of control. Let people see what happened. Let them see his boot connecting with my stomach. Let them see me bleeding on that marble floor. Let them see the badge falling out of my purse like some kind of sick reveal. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them be angry. Maybe then something actually changes." Marcus sat down beside her, was quiet for a moment. Then, "You know Claire would be proud of you." Jordan's throat tightened. Claire would be furious this happened in the first place. Both things can be true. They sat in silence, watching the protesters grow, watching the news cameras multiply, watching what had started as one woman requesting banking documents turn into something much bigger. Jordan's phone buzzed, unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her. "Agent Price." The voice was female, older, unfamiliar. "This is she." "My name is Patricia Okonkwo. I'm a surgeon at Northwestern Memorial. And 6 months ago, Derek Hansen threw me against a wall in that same bank lobby." Jordan sat up straighter, ignored the pain in her ribs. "Tell me everything." Dr. Okonkwo's story came out in careful, measured sentences. She'd gone to Sterling Trust to deposit a check from a medical conference, $50,000, her own money, earned from a speaking engagement. Hansen had questioned her, asked where the money came from, suggested it looked suspicious. When she'd refused to explain herself beyond what was legally required, he'd grabbed her, pushed her. She'd hit the wall hard enough to crack 2 ribs. "They paid me $30,000 to go away," Dr. Okonkwo said. Her voice was tight with old anger. "Made me sign an NDA, told me it was standard procedure, that if I fought it, they'd make my life difficult, and I believed them because I was tired and hurt, and I just wanted it to be over." "But you're calling me now," Jordan said. "Why?" "Because I saw the video. Saw you bleeding on that floor. Saw that badge fall out. And I realized that if they could do this to an FBI agent, if they could kick you in the stomach and put you on the ground, then they were never going to stop. The NDA was just a way to buy silence, to protect themselves, to make sure people like me disappeared into paperwork while they kept doing it to the next person." Jordan closed her eyes. "I'm going to need your statement. Official testimony. It'll mean breaking your NDA." "I know," Dr. Okonkwo said. "I talked to my lawyer. She says NDAs that cover up civil rights violations are legally unenforceable, that I can speak without consequences." "There might still be consequences," Jordan warned. "Sterling Trust will fight. They'll try to discredit you, make it ugly." "Let them try." Dr. Okonkwo's voice was steel. "I'm a board-certified surgeon. I've saved lives. I've published research. I've done everything right. And Derek Hansen threw me against a wall because I had the audacity to deposit my own money while black. So yes, Agent Price, I'll testify. I'll break the NDA. I'll tell the world what they did. because watching you stand up gave me the courage to do the same." By the time Jordan ended the call, Marcus was staring at her. "We have another victim," Jordan said. "We're going to have more than one," Marcus replied. He showed her his phone again. "Look at the hashtag." She looked. Banking. While black was trending nationally, and underneath it dozens of people were sharing their own stories, their own encounters with Derek Hansen, their own experiences of being profiled, questioned, treated like criminals for doing something as basic as managing their money. Jordan's phone rang again, then again, then again. By evening, they had 7 more victims, all with similar stories, all willing to break their NDAs, all ready to testify. The bank's corporate office issued a statement at 6 p.m. Jordan read it on Marcus's phone while the paramedics finally convinced her to let them transport her to the hospital for x-rays. "We are deeply concerned by the allegations and are conducting a thorough internal investigation. Sterling Trust is committed to providing excellent service to all customers and maintaining the highest standards of professional conduct." "That's garbage," Marcus said flatly. "They're not admitting anything, not apologizing, not taking responsibility." "They will," Jordan said, "once we're done with them." The hospital was a different kind of chaos. Doctors who recognized her from the news, nurses who whispered when they thought she couldn't hear, X-ray techs who were extra gentle like she might shatter. The results came back 2 hours later. No broken ribs, deep tissue bruising, possible muscle tears, 6 weeks recovery minimum, pain medication prescribed, follow-up appointments scheduled. Jordan listened to the doctor explain her injuries and thought about Dr. Okonkwo with her cracked ribs, thought about the 7 other victims who'd come forward, thought about how many more were out there who hadn't called yet, who were still bound by silence and NDAs and fear. Marcus drove her home at midnight. Neither of them spoke much. The silence was comfortable, exhausted. The kind of quiet that came after surviving something terrible and not quite knowing how to process it yet. "You should stay with me tonight," Marcus said when they reached her apartment building. "You shouldn't be alone." "I'm always alone," Jordan said softly. "Not tonight, you're not." So Marcus came upstairs, made tea. Jordan didn't drink, sat on her couch while she stared at the photo of Claire on the mantel, the one from their wedding day, both of them smiling like the world was full of nothing but good things. "She'd know what to say right now," Jordan said. "What would she say?" Jordan was quiet for a long time. Then she'd say that pain is just proof you're still fighting, that bruises heal but courage lasts, that the work we do matters even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Marcus nodded. Claire was smart. "Yeah, she was." Jordan's phone buzzed again. Another victim, a man named Kevin Washington, who'd been tackled by Derek Hansen for trying to cash a paycheck. Jordan took his information, added him to the list, promised he'd be contacted by the FBI. By 1 a.m., the list had grown to 12 people. By 2 a.m., it was 15. By 3 a.m., Jordan finally fell asleep on her couch with Marcus in the chair across from her. Both of them too wired to go to actual beds, both of them knowing that tomorrow would bring more calls and more victims and more evidence of a pattern so clear it couldn't be denied. Jordan dreamed of marble floors and Claire's voice telling her to get up. Dreamed of badges falling like leaves. Dreamed of boots and blood and the sound of her own ribs cracking. She woke up at 5 a.m. to her phone ringing. Keisha Grant from the Department of Justice. "Agent Price, I'm heading up the civil rights investigation into Sterling Trust. I need everything you have, every victim, every piece of evidence, every internal document you can get your hands on." Jordan sat up, ignored the pain screaming through her ribs. "How fast can you move?" "Fast," Keisha said. "We're filing for a pattern and practice investigation, full scope, every branch in 6 states. This isn't just about Derek Hansen anymore. This is about systemic discrimination, corporate policy that enabled it, management that covered it up. We're going after all of it." "Good," Jordan said, "because I found the email." "What email?" "The one from corporate to all branch managers, 18 months ago. Subject line, enhanced security protocols." It instructs managers to apply heightened scrutiny to non-traditional customers making unusual requests. Never defines non-traditional. Doesn't have to. Everyone knows what it means. Keisha was quiet for a moment. Then, "Send it to me, now." Jordan forwarded it. Heard Keisha's sharp intake of breath when she opened it. "This is smoking gun," Keisha said. "This is corporate directive to discriminate. Do you understand what this means?" "It means we have them," Jordan said. "It means we have them," Keisha confirmed. "I'm convening a grand jury. Derek Hansen is going down, Philip Warren is going down, and Sterling Trust Corporate is going to wish they'd never written that email." The indictments came down 3 days later. Jordan was still recovering at home when Marcus called with the news. Derek Hansen. 4 counts: assault on a federal officer, deprivation of rights under color of law, 2 counts of assault and battery, maximum sentence 20 years. Philip Warren. 3 counts: conspiracy to violate civil rights, obstruction of justice, false statements to federal investigators, maximum sentence 15 years. And Sterling Trust Bank Corporate Department of Justice pattern and practice investigation covering 43 branches across 6 states. Full audit of every customer complaint, every settlement, every internal communication, everything. Jordan listened to Marcus recite the charges and felt something in her chest unclench. Just slightly, just enough to breathe a little easier. "Hansen's lawyer is already asking for leniency," Marcus said, "claiming he didn't know you were FBI. That changes nothing legally, but they're going to try to use it for sympathy." "Let them try," Jordan said. "I have 15 victims willing to testify that I'm not the first person he brutalized. That being FBI doesn't make me special. It just means I had the resources to fight back." The media coverage was relentless. Jordan's face was everywhere. The photo of her standing in that lobby with blood on her lip and her badge on her belt became iconic. The video of Derek Hansen's boot connecting with her stomach was played on every news channel, with trigger warnings and heated debates about police brutality and racial profiling and whether banks needed federal oversight. Jordan watched it all from her apartment, watched talking heads dissect her trauma like it was a case study, watched commenters debate whether she deserved it somehow, watched the country divide itself into camps based on a 40-second video that showed exactly who Derek Hansen was when he thought no one important was watching. Her doorbell rang on day 5. She answered it to find the elderly woman from the bank lobby, still in purple, still with kind eyes, still with that strength that came from witnessing horror and refusing to look away. "I hope you don't mind," the woman said. "I'm Margaret Whitfield. I picked up your badge. I wanted to check on you." Jordan invited her in, made tea this time, actually drank it. They sat in Jordan's living room, and Margaret told her story, told her about her son 20 years ago. Traffic stop that went wrong. Police said he was resisting. He wasn't. Nobody fought for him. Nobody recorded it. Nobody believed his mother when she said her boy was gentle and kind and wouldn't hurt anyone. "He died on the side of the road," Margaret said. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook around her teacup. "And the officers who killed him got administrative leave and went right back to work. And I had to bury my baby and pretend that justice would come someday, even though I knew it wouldn't." Jordan reached across the space between them, took Margaret's hand, held it. "I can't bring your son back," Jordan said quietly. "But I can make sure Derek Hansen never wears a uniform again, never has authority over anyone again, never gets to hurt someone's mother's child again." Margaret squeezed her hand. "That's all I'm asking. That's all any of us are asking. Just for it to matter. For someone to say that what happened wasn't okay. For someone to fight." They sat together for an hour. 2 women separated by decades and circumstances, but connected by the understanding that justice wasn't given. It was fought for every single day, in courtrooms and bank lobbies and living rooms where mothers grieved sons who would never come home. When Margaret left, Jordan stood at her window and watched the older woman walk down the street with her head high and her purple dress bright against the gray Chicago afternoon. Then she called Marcus. "I want to meet every victim," Jordan said. "Every single person who came forward. I want to hear their stories. I want them to know they matter, that what happened to them wasn't acceptable, that we're going to fight for them." "Jordan, you're still recovering." "I don't care. Set it up." Marcus was quiet. Then, "Okay, I'll set it up." The meeting happened at St. Augustine's Church on the South Side. Reverend Morris Gaines offered the space, said it was important that the community had somewhere safe to gather, somewhere they could speak without fear. Jordan arrived early, still moving carefully, still favoring her ribs, still on pain medication that made everything feel slightly distant, but couldn't quite touch the determination burning in her chest. The victims arrived one by one. Dr. Patricia Okonkwo in her surgical scrubs coming straight from the hospital, Kevin Washington with his wife and 2 young daughters, a woman named Lisa Rodriguez who was an attorney and had still been thrown to the ground for depositing a settlement check, a man named Jermaine Ellis who taught high school and had been followed through the bank like a shoplifter for 10 minutes before being confronted. 15 people, 15 stories. 15 variations on the same theme, walking into a bank and being treated like criminals, being profiled, being questioned, being brutalized. And every single one of them had signed NDAs, had taken money to disappear quietly, had been told that fighting would be harder than accepting that this was just how things were. Jordan stood in front of them, looked at their faces, saw her own pain reflected back at her. "I'm not going to tell you that what happened to me was worse than what happened to you," she began. "It wasn't. The only difference between my assault and yours is that I had a badge in my purse that fell out at exactly the right moment. That's it. That's the only reason I'm standing here and Derek Hansen is facing charges instead of you being another person paid off to stay quiet." Dr. Okonkwo nodded. "I felt so stupid for taking the money, for signing that NDA." "You're not stupid," Jordan said firmly. "You were injured and scared, and they used that against you. They counted on you being tired, being hurt, being willing to accept their $30,000 and their promise that fighting would make things worse. That's not stupidity. That's survival. But now we have a choice. We can keep surviving quietly, or we can fight. Together." "What does fighting look like?" Kevin Washington asked. "It looks like breaking the NDAs," Jordan said. "All of you. Standing up in court and testifying about what Derek Hansen did, what Philip Warren allowed, what Sterling Trust Corporate enabled through their policies. It looks like being uncomfortable and being questioned and having your lives scrutinized. It looks like the bank's lawyers trying to discredit you, trying to make you seem unreliable or angry or like you're just looking for money. It's going to be ugly." Silence. Heavy. Uncertain. Then Lisa Rodriguez stood up. "I'm an attorney. I know exactly how ugly it's going to get, and I'm still doing it. Because watching that video of you bleeding on that floor made me realize that my silence protected them. That every time someone like me takes the money and signs the NDA and disappears, it makes it easier for them to do it to the next person. So I'm breaking my NDA. I'm testifying. Let them try to discredit me." One by one, the others stood. Dr. Okonkwo, Kevin Washington, Jermaine Ellis, all 15 victims rising to their feet in that church and choosing courage over safety. Jordan felt something break open in her chest, something that had been locked tight since Claire died, since she'd decided that the only way to survive was to stay cold and controlled and professional at all times. She felt hope. The news broke at 6 a.m. on a Wednesday. Jordan was drinking her second cup of coffee when Marcus called, his voice tight with something between excitement and dread. Sterling Trust's stock dropped 18% overnight. Their PR team just issued another statement. "You need to see this." Jordan pulled up the statement on her laptop, read it twice, then a third time, because she couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. "We acknowledge that serious incidents occurred at our Michigan Avenue branch, and we are taking immediate corrective action. We have placed the employees involved on administrative leave pending the outcome of the federal investigation. We remain committed to serving all customers with dignity and respect." "Administrative leave," Jordan said flatly. "Not fired, not terminated. Administrative leave with pay." "It gets worse," Marcus said. "I talked to Keisha Grant, Sterling Trust's legal team is already preparing their defense. They're going to argue that Derek Hansen was a rogue employee acting outside company policy, that they had no knowledge of his behavior, that the enhanced security protocol's email was taken out of context. Jordan felt fury rise in her throat, like bile. They have 17 documented complaints. Trevor's logbook alone proves they knew. They're claiming those complaints were properly investigated and addressed through additional training, that they followed all required procedures. Training, Jordan repeated. The word tasted like ash. They broke Dr. Okonkwo's ribs and gave Derek Hansen training. She could hear Marcus breathing on the other end of the line, frustrated, angry, as helpless as she felt in the face of corporate lawyers who turned violence into bureaucratic language and thought that made it acceptable. "What do we do?" Marcus asked. Jordan was quiet for a moment, thinking, planning. Then, "We take it public, all of it. Every victim, every story, every piece of evidence. We make it impossible for them to hide behind lawyers and PR statements and claims that they didn't know. The case is ongoing. Keisha might not want... I don't care what Keisha wants. These people trusted me, trusted us. They broke their NDAs because I told them fighting would matter, that their courage would mean something. And Sterling Trust just issued a statement that basically says Derek Hansen was a bad apple and everything's fine now. That's not acceptable." Marcus was quiet. Then, "What do you need from me?" "Call Simone Carter, the investigative journalist who's been covering this. Tell her I'll give her an exclusive. Full access to the victims, full transparency, everything." "Jordan, do it, Marcus." He did it. Simone Carter arrived at Jordan's apartment 3 hours later. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, the kind of presence that made you want to tell her things even when you knew you shouldn't. She'd built her reputation on exposing corporate corruption and holding powerful people accountable. Her article on pharmaceutical companies bribing doctors had won a Pulitzer. Jordan let her in, offered coffee. They sat across from each other at Jordan's small kitchen table, and Simone pulled out her recorder. "Before we start," Simone said, "I need you to understand what you're doing here. Once this goes public, Sterling Trust is going to come after you. Hard. They'll try to discredit you. They'll dig into your past. They'll look for anything they can use to make you seem unreliable or vindictive, or like you're just looking for attention. Are you ready for that?" Jordan thought about Claire, about Margaret Whitfield's son who died on the side of the road, about Dr. Okonkwo with her broken ribs and her $30,000 silence, about every person who'd been kicked and dragged and brutalized and paid off to disappear. "I'm ready," she said. Simone hit record. Jordan told her everything, not the sanitized version she'd given in her official FBI statement, the real version, the fear she'd felt when Derek Hansen first started watching her, the way her heart had raced when he'd asked where she was from, the moment she'd understood that nothing she said would matter because he'd already decided she didn't belong. The pain of his boot connecting with her stomach, the taste of blood from her split lip, the humiliation of being face down on that marble floor while a dozen people watched and recorded and did nothing to help until her badge fell out. "Why do you think he kicked you?" Simone asked. Jordan was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Because I didn't stay down. Mentally, I mean. He'd grabbed me, twisted my arm, put me on my knees. And I still wouldn't submit. Still wouldn't stop asking questions, still wouldn't act scared or ashamed or like I'd done something wrong. So he escalated. Because men like Derek Hansen measure their power by how much they can make you hurt, how much they can make you fear them, and I wouldn't give him that. So he took it." Simone's pen moved across her notepad. "The bank is claiming he acted outside policy. What do you say to that?" "I say the enhanced security protocols email proves otherwise. I say 17 previous complaints proves otherwise. I say Philip Warren calling corporate legal before Derek Hansen ever touched me proves otherwise. This wasn't one bad employee. This was institutional. This was policy." "Can you prove that?" Jordan pulled out her laptop, showed Simone everything. The email, Trevor's logbook, The settlement agreements with their suspiciously consistent dollar amounts just below public disclosure thresholds. Internal memos flagging customer service concerns that were marked addressed and then buried without any actual action. Simone's eyes widened as she scrolled through the documents. "Where did you get these?" "Someone inside sent them to me. Anonymously. Someone who's been watching this happen and finally decided they couldn't stay quiet anymore." "Do you know who?" "No. And I wouldn't tell you if I did." Simone nodded, respect in her eyes. She spent the next hour interviewing Jordan, asked about her background, her training, her career, her wife. Jordan almost shut down when Simone asked about Claire, but then decided that hiding that part of herself was just another way of letting them win. "My wife was killed 3 years ago," Jordan said. "Hit and run, driver was never found. And I decided that day that I was going to spend the rest of my life fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves, because Claire believed that was what mattered, not money or status or safety, justice, real justice, the kind that required sacrifice." "Is that why you became an FBI agent?" "No. I became an FBI agent because I was good at following money and understanding patterns and catching people who thought they were too smart to get caught. But it's why I stayed one, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. Because if I don't fight, who will?" After Jordan, Simone interviewed the victims. Dr. Okonkwo told her story with clinical precision, describing exactly how Derek Hansen had grabbed her, where she'd hit the wall, which ribs had cracked. Kevin Washington brought his daughters and let them see their father cry as he explained how ashamed he'd felt when Hansen tackled him in front of a lobby full of people for trying to cash his paycheck. Lisa Rodriguez, the attorney who should have known better than to sign the NDA, described the moment she'd realized that her legal training meant nothing when she was being thrown to the ground for depositing a settlement check that was legally hers. Simone recorded it all. Every word, every tear, every moment of courage from people who'd been silenced and were now choosing to speak. The article went live on Thursday evening. The headline was perfect: FBI agent assaulted while banking, while black, and she's not the first. It was devastating, comprehensive, impossible to dismiss. Simone had included everything: the victims' stories, the corporate emails, the settlement agreements, Trevor's logbook, expert analysis from civil rights attorneys explaining exactly how Sterling Trust had violated federal law, photographs of Jordan's bruises, stills from Tyler's video showing Derek Hansen's boot connecting with her stomach, and at the end, a statement from Sterling Trust's CEO that Simone had obtained through persistence. "We are conducting a thorough review of our policies and procedures to ensure all customers receive excellent service. No apology, no admission of wrongdoing, no acknowledgement that 17 people had been brutalized and paid off to stay quiet." The article went viral in under 2 hours. 6 million views by midnight, 10 million by morning. By Friday afternoon, it had been shared by every major news outlet, translated into 7 languages, and become the most read investigative piece of the year. Jordan's phone didn't stop ringing. Interview requests from CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, local stations, podcasts, radio shows. Everyone wanted her story. Everyone wanted her face. Everyone wanted to turn her trauma into content. She declined all of them, except one. A small public radio show that focused on civil rights issues and gave her 30 minutes to speak without interruption. The host, a woman named Diane Washington, who'd covered the civil rights movement in the 60s, asked her one question: "What do you want people to understand about what happened to you?" Jordan thought about it, then said, "I want people to understand that my badge didn't make me special. It just made me visible. Derek Hansen has been doing this for years to people who didn't have badges or cameras or federal resources to fight back, people who took the money and signed the NDAs because they were tired and hurt, and the system was designed to make fighting harder than surrendering. Those are the people I'm fighting for. Not myself, them." The interview aired on Friday evening. Jordan listened to her own voice on Marcus's car radio as they drove to meet with Keisha Grant and felt something like pride, not in what had happened to her, but in what she was doing with it. Keisha was waiting for them at the federal building. She had new documents spread across her desk and the look of someone who hadn't slept in 3 days, but was running on pure righteous fury. "We found more branches," Keisha said without preamble. "The pattern isn't just Michigan Avenue. It's everywhere Sterling Trust operates. We pulled complaint records from 43 branches across 6 states, and the numbers are staggering. In predominantly Black and Latino neighborhoods, customer complaints are 3 times higher than in predominantly white neighborhoods. Security incidents are 5 times higher. Settlement payouts are 7 times higher. This isn't isolated. This is systematic." Marcus leaned forward. "Can you prove corporate knew?" "Better than that. We can prove corporate designed it." Keisha pulled up an internal memo on her laptop. "This is from Sterling Trust's Chief Security Officer to all regional managers, dated 2 years ago. Subject Loss Prevention Enhancement Initiative. It specifically instructs managers to increase security presence in urban branches and apply enhanced screening to high-risk demographics." "High-risk demographics," Jordan repeated. "They don't even try to hide it." "Why would they?" Keisha asked. "Until now, nobody was looking. Nobody was fighting back. The NDAs kept victims quiet. The settlements kept lawyers happy. The system worked perfectly for them." "What's our next move?" Marcus asked. Keisha's smile was sharp. "We burn it down. All of it. I'm recommending the DOJ file a pattern and practice lawsuit against Sterling Trust Corporate. Full investigation. Consent decree. Federal monitor for 5 years minimum. Complete overhaul of their security policies, independent civil rights auditor, mandatory training for every employee at every branch, and a victim compensation fund that's actually meaningful. Not these insulting $30,000 payoffs. Real money, real accountability." Jordan felt something fierce and hot bloom in her chest. "How much are we talking?" $47 million, Keisha said. "That's what their legal team is going to fight. That's what we're going to get." The DOJ filed the lawsuit on Monday morning. Sterling Trust stock dropped another 12% before trading was halted. Their CEO held a press conference at 2 p.m., looking like he'd aged a decade in a week. He read from a prepared statement about regret and commitment to change and comprehensive review processes, but his eyes kept darting to the protesters gathering outside the building. The protests had started small. 12 people outside Sterling Trust's corporate headquarters on the day Jordan's assault went public. By Monday, there were 300. By Tuesday, there were 1,000. Reverend Morris Gaines led them, his voice booming through a megaphone, as he called for justice and accountability and an end to the kind of violence that turned banking into a life-threatening activity for people of color. Jordan went to the protest on Wednesday, walked through the crowd with Marcus beside her, and felt the energy change when people recognized her. The chanting paused. Heads turned. Then someone started clapping, slow at first, then faster. Then everyone was clapping and cheering and chanting her name. Jordan Claire Price. Jordan Claire Price. Jordan Claire Price. She felt overwhelmed, humbled, terrified of what it meant to be a symbol instead of just a person. But then Margaret Whitfield was there in her purple dress, taking Jordan's hand and squeezing it. "You did this," Margaret said. "You gave us permission to fight." Reverend Gaines handed Jordan the megaphone. She hadn't planned to speak, but now everyone was looking at her, waiting, expecting. She took a breath, thought about what Claire would say, then spoke. "My name is Jordan Price, and I'm an FBI agent, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here because Derek Hansen kicked me in the stomach in a bank lobby, and I'm tired of pretending that's acceptable. I'm tired of watching people get brutalized and paid off to stay quiet. I'm tired of a system that protects men like Derek Hansen and institutions like Sterling Trust, while punishing the victims for having the audacity to ask questions or deposit checks or exist in spaces that were never designed for us." The crowd roared. Jordan waited for them to quiet. "But I'm also here because I had advantages most victims don't have. I had a badge, I had federal resources, I had a partner who wouldn't let me fight alone. And because of those advantages, I get to stand here and demand accountability. But what about the people who don't have those advantages? What about Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, who had her ribs broken and was paid $30,000 to disappear? What about Kevin Washington, who was tackled in front of his daughters? What about the hundreds of other victims we haven't found yet because they're still bound by NDAs and fear and the belief that fighting is harder than surrendering? She paused. Let the question sit. Those are the people we're fighting for. Not me. Them. Every person who's ever walked into a bank and been treated like a criminal. Every person who's ever been profiled or questioned or brutalized for doing something as basic as managing their money. This isn't about one assault. This is about a pattern, a practice, a system that needs to be dismantled. And we're not stopping until it is. The crowd erupted again, chanting, cheering, signs waving. Jordan handed the megaphone back to Reverend Gaines and let Marcus guide her away before the emotion caught up with her. They were halfway down the block when Jordan's phone buzzed. Unknown number again. She answered. Agent Price, my name is Trevor Mills. We met at the bank. I'm the security guard who documented everything. I remember you, Trevor. What can I do for you? I need to tell you something. Something I didn't put in my official statement because I was scared. But after watching you speak just now, I can't stay quiet anymore. Jordan stopped walking, gestured for Marcus to wait. I'm listening. Derek Hansen kept a list, Trevor said. His voice was shaking. Names, descriptions, license plates. Every customer he thought was suspicious. He called it his watch list, and he shared it with other Sterling Trust security guards at other branches. I saw the email chains, saw the photos he'd take of people without their knowledge, saw the comments they'd make. Racial slurs, jokes about certain customers being high risk. It was like a game to them. Jordan's blood went cold. Do you still have access to these emails? I saved everything before I quit. Hundreds of messages, going back 3 years. I can send them to you. But Agent Price, if I do this, I'm burning every bridge I have in security work. I'm making myself unemployable. I need you to promise me it's going to matter. Jordan thought about the 15 victims who'd broken their NDAs, about Margaret Whitfield losing her son, about Claire who'd died believing that fighting for justice was worth any sacrifice. It's going to matter, Trevor. I promise you it's going to matter. Send me everything. The emails arrived an hour later. Jordan and Marcus went through them in Jordan's apartment with Keisha on speakerphone. The content was worse than Jordan had imagined. Hundreds of messages between Derek Hansen and security guards at 17 different Sterling Trust branches. Photos of customers, license plate numbers, descriptions that made Jordan's stomach turn. Black male, mid-30s expensive car, probably drug money. Latina woman designer purse likely stolen, Asian couple cash deposit gambling or laundering, and the jokes. God, the jokes. Casual racism so normalized that nobody even questioned it. Just men with badges and radios deciding who belonged and who didn't, and treating that decision like it was their right. This is a federal conspiracy, Keisha said. Her voice was tight with fury. This isn't just Derek Hansen. This isn't even just Sterling Trust. This is organized racial profiling across multiple states. We can bring RICO charges for this. How many guards are implicated? Marcus asked. Jordan counted. 23, including 2 regional security coordinators and 1 district manager. Jesus, Keisha breathed. How deep does this go? They found out the next day when a woman named Claudia Rivera called Jordan's office. The assistant manager from the Michigan Avenue branch, the one who'd been typing frantically on her computer while Jordan waited, the one who'd filmed Derek Hansen's assault on her phone. I need to talk to you, Claudia said. Not officially, not yet, but I need to talk to you. They met at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park. Neutral territory. Claudia looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun, the kind of tired that came from not sleeping because your conscience wouldn't let you. I've been at Sterling Trust for 8 years, Claudia said, worked my way up from teller to assistant manager, and I've watched this happen, the profiling, the targeting, the way certain customers got treated differently. I told myself it was just Derek, just one bad guard. But then I started paying attention, started seeing the patterns, started noticing that corporate never did anything when complaints came in, just paid people off and moved on. Why are you telling me this now? Jordan asked. Claudia's hands shook around her coffee cup. Because I was part of it. Not actively. I never hurt anyone. never participated in Derek's watch list. But I stayed quiet. I processed the NDAs. I helped draft the settlement agreements. I sat in meetings where we discussed how to minimize liability without actually changing anything. I was complicit. What changed? Watching him kick you, Claudia said simply. Watching you bleed on that floor, watching your badge fall out, and realizing that if it could happen to you, if they could brutalize an FBI agent and think they'd get away with it, then nothing was ever going to change unless someone inside spoke up. Jordan leaned forward. What do you have? Everything. Settlement agreements for every victim at every branch, internal memos about customer complaints, email chains between regional managers and corporate discussing how to handle security incidents, training documents that specifically instruct managers on how to enforce the enhanced security protocols without explicitly mentioning race, meeting minutes where executives discussed maintaining demographic screening while staying legally defensible, all of it. That's evidence of corporate knowledge, Marcus said. That's everything we need to prove this went all the way to the top. Claudia nodded. I know. That's why I'm giving it to you. But I need protection. Sterling Trust's legal team will destroy me if they find out I'm talking to you. We can get you whistleblower protection, Jordan said. Federal law prohibits retaliation. You'll be safe. Will I? Claudia asked. Because I've watched Sterling Trust pay millions to make problems disappear. What's stopping them from making me disappear too? The question hung in the air, heavy, real, a reminder that fighting powerful institutions meant risking everything. But Jordan looked at Claudia and saw someone who'd made the same choice Dr. Okonkwo and Lisa Rodriguez and Kevin Washington and all the others had made. The choice to be uncomfortable, to be vulnerable, to fight even when fighting was terrifying. I can't promise it will be easy, Jordan said. But I can promise we'll fight for you the same way we're fighting for everyone else. You won't be alone. Claudia was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out a flash drive from her purse and slid it across the table. Everything's on here. Every document, every email, every piece of evidence that proves Sterling Trust knew exactly what was happening and chose profit over people. Jordan took the flash drive, held it like it was precious, like it was justice condensed into silicon and metal. Thank you, she said. Claudia's eyes were wet. I should have done this years ago. Should have spoken up the first time I saw Derek target someone. Should have refused to process those NDAs. Should have been brave enough to choose right over comfortable. You're doing it now, Jordan said. That's what matters. The evidence from Claudia's flash drive was exactly what they needed. Keisha filed for an emergency injunction to freeze all Sterling Trust's settlement funds pending investigation, filed for an order compelling the bank to void all existing NDAs, filed for corporate records going back 10 years, filed for everything. Sterling Trust fought back hard, deployed a team of attorneys that probably cost more than Jordan made in a decade, argued that the NDAs were valid contracts, that voiding them would set a dangerous precedent, that the federal government was overreaching. The judge, a black woman in her 60s named Teresa Johnson, who'd built her career on civil rights cases, listened to their arguments for exactly 15 minutes before cutting them off. Counselor, are you seriously arguing that your client has a constitutional right to silence victims of civil rights violations through financial intimidation? Sterling Trust's lead attorney stammered. We're arguing that valid contracts should be honored. And I'm telling you that contracts used to cover up systematic discrimination are not valid. They're void as against public policy. So unless you have a better argument than corporate convenience, I'm granting the government's motion. All NDAs are void. All settlement funds are frozen pending investigation. And your client is going to produce every document the DOJ has requested. Do I make myself clear? The attorney went pale. Your Honor, we request time to appeal. Denied. Get me those documents by Friday, or I'll hold your client in contempt. We're adjourned. The gavel came down like thunder. Jordan and Marcus walked out of the courthouse into a sea of protesters who'd been waiting for the ruling. When word spread that Judge Johnson had sided with the government, the crowd erupted in cheers. Margaret Whitfield was there. Dr. Okonkwo, Kevin Washington with his daughters, Lisa Rodriguez, Jermaine Ellis. All 15 original victims plus dozens more who'd come forward after the NDAs were voided. People who'd been silent for years, who'd taken money to disappear, who were now standing together and refusing to be quiet anymore. Reverend Gaines raised his hands for quiet. When the crowd settled, he turned to Jordan. "Agent Price, these people want to hear from you." Jordan looked at all those faces, all that hope, all that trust, and felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders like a physical thing. She thought about what Claire would say, about Margaret's son, about every person who'd been kicked and dragged and brutalized and made to feel like they didn't matter. Then she spoke. Derek Hansen is going to prison. Philip Warren is going to prison. And Sterling Trust is going to pay, not just money, real accountability, real change, because all of you had the courage to fight, to break your NDAs, to stand up and say that what happened wasn't acceptable. You did this, not me, you. The crowd roared, but Jordan wasn't finished. And we're not stopping here, because Sterling Trust isn't the only bank that profiles customers. Derek Hansen isn't the only security guard who thinks his badge gives him the right to brutalize people of color. This pattern exists everywhere, in banks and stores and schools and hospitals and every other institution that was built to serve some people and police others. So we keep fighting, we keep exposing, we keep demanding better, until the system changes or we tear it down and build something new. The chanting started again, louder this time, more certain. Jordan Claire Price. Jordan Claire Price. Jordan Claire Price. But Jordan wasn't thinking about her name or her face or her badge. She was thinking about the flash drive in her pocket with evidence that would take down 23 security guards and multiple Sterling Trust executives, about the grand jury that was convening next week, about Derek Hansen in his holding cell waiting for trial, about Philip Warren who'd already started plea negotiations because he knew he was done, about justice, real justice, the kind Claire had believed in, the kind that required sacrifice but changed everything. And Jordan understood, standing in that crowd of people who'd chosen courage over comfort, that this was just the beginning. The grand jury convened on a Monday morning in late November. Jordan sat in the waiting area outside the federal courtroom, watching prosecutors carry in boxes of evidence. 17 boxes, each one labeled with case numbers and dates and the names of people whose lives had been turned into exhibits. Marcus sat beside her, scrolling through his phone. Sterling Trust stock is down 42% since the judge voided the NDAs. Their board is calling an emergency meeting tomorrow. Good, Jordan said. She didn't feel good, though. She felt tired. Her ribs still ached when she breathed too deep. The bruising on her stomach had faded from purple to green to yellow, but she could still feel exactly where Derek Hansen's boot had connected. Could still feel that moment of complete helplessness when the air left her lungs and pain took over everything. Keisha Grant emerged from the courtroom. She looked exhausted but satisfied, the look of someone who'd been working 18-hour days and knew it was paying off. "They're ready for you," Keisha said. Jordan stood, smoothed her jacket, checked that her badge was visible on her belt. She'd thought about that choice carefully, whether to wear it or not, whether it made her look like she was using her position for sympathy. But then she'd decided that Derek Hansen had kicked her specifically because she wouldn't show him the badge, wouldn't prove she belonged, so wearing it now felt like reclaiming something he'd tried to take. The grand jury room was smaller than she expected, 23 people sitting in rows, ordinary people called to decide if the evidence justified criminal charges. Their faces were serious, attentive. Jordan could see some of them looking at her badge, looking at her face, probably recognizing her from the news coverage that had been relentless for 3 weeks. The prosecutor, a woman named Amanda Chen, gestured for Jordan to sit. "Agent Price, thank you for being here. I know this is difficult. I'm going to walk you through what happened on October 15th at Sterling Trust Bank. Take your time. If you need a break at any point, just let me know." Jordan nodded. She'd given this testimony before, to FBI investigators, to DOJ attorneys, to Keisha Grant. But something about doing it in front of regular people felt different, more real. like it mattered in a way the official statements hadn't. Amanda started with basic questions: her name, her position, how long she'd been with the FBI, what brought her to Sterling Trust that day. Jordan answered each one carefully, precisely, the way she'd been trained. Then Amanda pulled up the video, Tyler Chen's recording, the one that had been viewed 40 million times and counting, the one that showed everything. "I'm going to play this for the jury," Amanda said, "but first I want you to narrate what we're seeing. Tell us what you were thinking, what you were feeling." Jordan watched herself on the screen, watched Derek Hansen approach, watched the confrontation escalate, and she spoke. "I'm standing near the pillar. I've been waiting for 47 minutes at this point. I can see Derek Hansen moving toward me, and I know what's coming. I've been profiled before. I know what it looks like, what it feels like, the way someone decides you're a threat before you've done anything wrong." On screen, Hansen demanded she step outside. "I'm refusing because I have every right to be there. I'm a customer. I requested legitimate banking documents, but he's not seeing a customer. He's seeing a black woman who won't comply, who won't show deference, who won't act scared." The jury watched as Hansen grabbed Jordan's arm. Several people shifted in their seats. One woman brought her hand to her mouth. "He's twisting my arm. You can see my body turning involuntarily. That's not resistance. That's trying to prevent injury. But he reads it as resistance because he needs me to be resisting, needs me to be the threat he's already decided I am." Then came the kick. Jordan watched her own body fold, watched herself hit the floor, heard the gasps from the jury. "I can't breathe," Jordan said quietly. "The pain is so intense I can't process anything else. I'm trying to hold myself up, trying to stay conscious, trying to remember that I'm an FBI agent and I need to document this, need to survive this, need to make sure it matters." Amanda paused the video. "Did you identify yourself as a federal agent before this point?" "No." "Why not?" Jordan looked at the jury, made eye contact with each person. "Because I shouldn't have to. I was a customer conducting legitimate business. The fact that I'm FBI is irrelevant to whether I deserve to be treated with basic human dignity. If Derek Hansen only respects people with badges, then he doesn't actually respect anyone. He just fears consequences." One of the jurors, an older black man in the back row, nodded slowly. Jordan saw it, felt it, the moment of connection that said he understood exactly what she meant. Amanda played the rest of the video, the purse strap breaking, the badge sliding across the floor, Margaret Whitfield picking it up. The moment, everything changed. "What went through your mind when your credentials were revealed?" Amanda asked. "Honestly, relief and fury. Relief because I knew Derek Hansen would face consequences he wouldn't have faced if I was just Jordan Price, regular customer. Fury because that shouldn't matter, because the 15 other people he brutalized didn't have badges and they deserve justice too." Amanda pulled up photos of Jordan's injuries, the bruising, the split lip, the medical reports documenting possible rib fractures and soft tissue damage. The jury looked at each image. Jordan watched their faces change, watched horror and anger and disgust settle over them like a fog. Then Amanda brought out Trevor's logbook. Read entries aloud. Dates and times and descriptions of Derek Hansen targeting customers of color, questioning them, following them, putting his hands on them. 17 separate incidents. 17 people who'd been treated like criminals for banking while black or brown. "And what happened to these complaints?" Amanda asked. "Nothing," Jordan said. "They were documented, filed, then buried. Some victims were paid off with NDAs. Others just stopped coming to that branch. The pattern continued because Sterling Trust chose to let it continue." Amanda pulled up the Enhanced Security Protocols email, read it to the jury, let them hear the coded language about non-traditional customers and high-risk demographics and heightened scrutiny. "In your professional opinion as an FBI agent who investigates financial crimes, what does this email represent?" "Corporate policy to discriminate," Jordan said. "It never mentions race explicitly because that would be legally actionable. But everyone knows what non-traditional means. Everyone knows what high-risk demographics means. It's a permission slip. a way for Sterling Trust to profile customers while maintaining plausible deniability. The questioning went on for 2 hours. Amanda walked Jordan through every piece of evidence, every victim statement, every email from Derek Hansen's watch list, every settlement agreement, every internal memo showing corporate knowledge. When it was finally over, Jordan felt hollowed out, exhausted, like she'd relived the assault a dozen times and each replay had taken something from her. The grand jury deliberated for 3 hours. Jordan waited in Keisha's office, drinking coffee she didn't taste and staring at her phone without seeing it. Marcus tried to distract her. "Want to get food? There's a good Thai place 2 blocks from here." "I'm not hungry." "You haven't eaten since yesterday." "I'll eat when this is done." Marcus didn't push, just sat with her. The way he'd sat with her every day since the assault. The way he'd shown up at her apartment every morning to make sure she was okay. The way he'd stood between her and the media and the protesters and everyone who wanted something from her when all she wanted was space to breathe. Jordan's phone buzzed. Text from a number she didn't recognize. She almost ignored it, but something made her look. It was a photo. Derek Hansen in an orange jumpsuit, his mugshot. The text below read, "Thank you for making him face consequences. He put my brother in the hospital 2 years ago. We signed the NDA, took $25,000 and stayed quiet. Watching you fight gave us the courage to break it. We're testifying too." Jordan showed Marcus. His jaw clenched. "How many more are out there?" "Dozens, maybe hundreds. People we haven't found yet because they're still too scared to come forward." Keisha walked in at 6 p.m. She was smiling, actually smiling in a way Jordan hadn't seen since this whole thing started. "They indicted," Keisha said. "All counts. Derek Hansen, Philip Warren, and corporate." Jordan felt something in her chest unclench. Corporate too. Corporate too. The grand jury came back with conspiracy to violate civil rights pattern and practice discrimination, obstruction of justice. Sterling Trust is facing federal charges as an institution. Marcus let out a breath. "That's unprecedented." "It's deserved," Keisha said. "We have them, all of them. Now we just need to make sure the trial goes our way." The trial was set for March, 4 months away. 4 months of preparation and depositions and media coverage and protesters and death threats that started arriving at Jordan's apartment the day after the indictment. The first one came through her mail slot. Plain white envelope, no return address. Inside a single page with cut-out magazine letters like something from a bad crime show. "Race-baiting bitch, you're going to pay for destroying innocent men's lives." Jordan showed it to Marcus. He immediately called FBI security. Started protocols for threat assessment. Arranged for Jordan's building to install cameras. Made her promise she'd vary her routes. Check her car before getting in. Not answer the door without looking through the peephole first. "This is insane," Jordan said. "I'm the victim, and I'm the one who has to live in fear." "You're the one who fought back," Marcus corrected. "That makes you dangerous to people who want the system to stay exactly as it is." The threats escalated. Someone spray-painted racial slurs on her car. Someone left a dead rat on her doorstep. Someone called her office 40 times in one day, breathing heavily into the phone without saying anything. Jordan reported all of it, documented everything, refused to be intimidated. But she'd be lying if she said she wasn't scared. Scared in a way she hadn't been since Claire died. Since she'd learned that violence could find you even when you did everything right, she called Dr. Okonkwo one night when the fear got too heavy. Needed to talk to someone who understood what it meant to fight back and face consequences for it. "They're trying to make you afraid," Patricia said. Her voice was calm, steady. "They're trying to make you regret speaking up. Don't give them that. Don't let them win." "How do you deal with it?" Jordan asked. "I remember why I'm fighting. I remember that little girl who needs heart surgery next week, and her mother who's working 3 jobs to pay for it, and the fact that she came to me because I'm the best pediatric surgeon in this city. And if Derek Hansen had succeeded in making me too scared to deposit my speaking fee check, I might not have the resources to take pro bono cases like hers. So I fight, not just for me, for everyone who needs me to be brave enough to keep doing my job. Jordan absorbed that. Let it settle. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep fighting. We're all counting on you. The pretrial hearings started in January. Sterling Trust's defense team was exactly what Jordan expected. Expensive suits, polished arguments, an aggressive strategy that involved attacking every piece of evidence and every witness and every claim. Their lead attorney was a man named Richard Hastings, silver-haired, 60-something, the kind of lawyer who defended corporations for 7 figures and slept well at night. He'd made his career arguing that discrimination was impossible to prove, that patterns weren't evidence, that individual bad actors shouldn't condemn entire institutions. His opening argument in the first pretrial hearing set the tone. Your Honor, the government is attempting to criminalize what was at most a regrettable incident involving one employee who acted outside company policy. Derek Hansen's actions were his own. Sterling Trust had comprehensive training programs, clear anti-discrimination policies, and robust complaint procedures. They cannot be held responsible for one man's poor judgment. Amanda Chen stood up. Your Honor, we have 17 documented complaints against Derek Hansen that Sterling Trust knew about and ignored. We have internal emails showing corporate-directed managers to profile customers. We have settlement agreements designed to silence victims. This isn't one bad employee. This is institutional rot. Judge Marcus Torres, presiding over the case, looked at Hastings over his reading glasses. Counselor, are you seriously arguing your client had no knowledge of systematic discrimination when we have literal emails instructing branch managers to target non-traditional customers? That email has been taken out of context, Hastings said smoothly. Enhanced security protocols are standard industry practice. Are they standard practice to kick customers in the stomach? Judge Torres interrupted. Hastings faltered. Of course not, Your Honor, but then let's stop pretending this is about security protocols and start dealing with the actual evidence. Motion to dismiss denied. We're going to trial. Jordan watched Hastings' face go tight, watched him exchange looks with his team, watched them realize that this judge wasn't going to let them hide behind corporate doublespeak. Outside the courthouse, protesters had grown to 2,000 people. Reverend Gaines had organized a coalition of civil rights groups, community organizations, and faith leaders. They held vigil every day of the hearings, singing, chanting, holding signs with Jordan's face and the faces of all the other victims. Margaret Whitfield was there every day in her purple dress, standing at the front, leading chants, refusing to let anyone forget why they were fighting. Jordan stopped to talk to her after one hearing. You don't have to do this every day. It's cold. You should be home resting. Margaret smiled. Baby, I've been fighting this fight for 40 years, since they killed my son, since they told me his life didn't matter. I'm not stopping now, not when we're finally winning. What if we don't win? Jordan asked quietly. The fear that kept her up at night, the possibility that Derek Hansen could walk, that Sterling Trust could escape real accountability, that all this courage and testimony and exposure would amount to nothing. Margaret took Jordan's hand, squeezed it. Then we fight again, and again, and again, until we do win, because that's what you do when you believe in something. You don't quit just because it's hard. The weeks leading up to trial were brutal. Jordan was deposed 6 times, questioned about every detail of her statement, every moment of the assault. Her lawyers prepared her for what Hastings would do during cross-examination, how he'd try to make her seem angry or vindictive or like she was using her FBI status for sympathy. He's going to ask why you didn't identify yourself earlier, Amanda said during prep, why you let the situation escalate instead of just showing your badge. Because I shouldn't have to show a badge to be treated like a human being, Jordan said. I know that. You know that. But he's going to try to make the jury think you were playing games, testing Derek Hansen, setting him up to fail. Jordan felt fury rise in her throat. He kicked me in the stomach. How is that my fault? It's not. But rich white men don't like being held accountable for violence, so they make it about the victim's choices instead of the perpetrator's actions. You need to be ready for that. Jordan was ready, or at least she thought she was, but nothing could have prepared her for the defense's opening statement on the first day of trial. Richard Hastings stood before the jury and painted a picture of Derek Hansen as a dedicated security professional who'd served his community for 20 years, who'd left the police force not because of excessive force complaints, but because he wanted to spend more time with his family, who took his job at Sterling Trust seriously, who was trained to identify suspicious behavior and respond appropriately. And what did Derek Hansen see that day? Hastings asked the jury. He saw a woman who refused to provide adequate information about why she was requesting unusual documents, who became belligerent when asked reasonable questions, who created a disturbance in a public place. And yes, he responded with force. But that force was not because of Agent Price's race. It was because of her behavior, her choices, her decision to escalate a situation that could have been resolved peacefully. Jordan felt Marcus tense beside her, felt her own hands ball into fists under the table, watched Hastings turn Derek Hansen from perpetrator to victim, from abuser to misunderstood public servant just doing his job. Then Hastings played his trump card. Ladies and gentlemen, Agent Price is a federal law enforcement officer. She's trained in de-escalation, trained in conflict resolution, trained to identify when situations are becoming dangerous, and yet she made no attempt to identify herself, no attempt to defuse the situation, no attempt to prevent what happened. She let it happen. Why? Because she wanted this outcome. She wanted to be able to claim discrimination, to file a lawsuit, to become famous. This isn't about justice. This is about a career-minded FBI agent who saw an opportunity and took it. The courtroom erupted, protesters in the gallery shouting, Judge Torres banging his gavel, Amanda on her feet objecting, Marcus half out of his chair ready to physically fight someone, and Jordan sitting frozen, watching her trauma get turned into ambition, her pain into performance, her courage into manipulation. Judge Torres called a recess. Jordan fled to the bathroom and threw up, stood over the sink shaking, trying to breathe, trying to remember why she was doing this, why she'd chosen to fight instead of taking a settlement and disappearing. Amanda found her 10 minutes later. Hey, you okay? He just called me a liar in front of a jury, told them I let Derek Hansen kick me so I could sue. I know, and we're going to destroy that narrative. We have 15 other victims who'll testify that you're not special, that Derek Hansen did this to all of them, that this is a pattern. Hastings is desperate. He's throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, but the evidence is on our side. What if it's not enough? Jordan asked. What if the jury believes him? Amanda was quiet for a moment. Then we appeal, and we fight again. But Jordan, you need to trust the process. Trust that 12 regular people can look at the evidence and see the truth, can watch that video and understand that no matter what you did or didn't do, Derek Hansen had no right to kick you. The trial went on for 3 weeks. The prosecution called witness after witness. Dr. Okonkwo testified about her broken ribs. Kevin Washington brought his daughters, who cried on the stand, describing how scared they were when the security guard tackled their father. Lisa Rodriguez explained that she was an attorney who knew her rights, and it didn't matter, because Derek Hansen decided she was suspicious anyway. Trevor took the stand and read from his logbook. 17 incidents, dates and times and descriptions that painted a clear picture of systematic targeting. His voice shook, but he didn't back down, not even when Hastings suggested he was a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind. I'm not disgruntled, Trevor said. I'm ashamed. Ashamed I stayed quiet as long as I did. Ashamed I let Derek Hansen terrorize people because I needed a job. I'm testifying now because Agent Price showed me what courage looks like. And I want to be brave too. Then Claudia Rivera testified about the corporate emails, the settlement agreements, the internal memos showing Sterling Trust knew exactly what was happening and chose to protect themselves instead of their customers. Hastings tried to discredit her, suggested she'd stolen confidential documents, that she was facing criminal charges for theft. I'm facing charges for doing the right thing, Claudia said calmly. Sterling Trust would rather prosecute me than acknowledge they enabled a violent racist. That tells you everything you need to know about their priorities. On day 15, Jordan took the stand. Amanda walked her through her testimony gently, carefully. Let her tell her story in her own words. Let the jury see her not as an FBI agent, but as a woman who'd been brutalized for asking questions. Then Hastings stood up for cross-examination, and Jordan understood why Amanda had been so worried. "Agent Price, you're trained in conflict resolution, correct?" "Yes." "You're trained to de-escalate dangerous situations?" "Yes." "You're trained to identify when someone might become violent?" "Yes." "And yet, you did none of those things on October 15th. Why?" Jordan looked at the jury. "Because I was a customer conducting legitimate business. I wasn't there as an FBI agent. I was there as a person requesting banking documents I was legally entitled to. I shouldn't have to de-escalate a situation I didn't create. But you could have prevented the assault by simply showing your badge, correct?" "No." Hastings raised his eyebrows. "No, no," Jordan repeated. "Showing my badge wouldn't have prevented Derek Hansen from profiling me, from questioning where I was from deciding I didn't belong. It would have just changed his excuse. He didn't kick me because I wouldn't show a badge. He kicked me because he couldn't tolerate a black woman who wouldn't submit." "That's quite an accusation." "It's what happened." Hastings pulled up the video, froze it at the moment before Derek Hansen kicked her. "Agent Price, isn't it true that you could have avoided this by simply leaving when asked? I had every right to be there." "But you could have left, could have come back another day, could have filed a complaint through proper channels. Instead, you chose confrontation." Jordan felt something hot and fierce rise in her chest. "I chose to exercise my rights. Derek Hansen chose violence. Those are not equivalent choices." The cross-examination went on for hours. Hastings tried every angle, suggested she was playing the race card, suggested she was exaggerating her injuries, suggested she'd orchestrated the whole thing for publicity. But Jordan didn't break, didn't waver, just kept telling the truth in calm, clear sentences that couldn't be twisted or misinterpreted. When it was finally over, Amanda whispered, "You did great. The jury believes you." Jordan wasn't so sure. She'd seen the faces. Some sympathetic, some skeptical, some impossible to read. The defense rested without calling Derek Hansen to testify. Too risky, too much evidence against him. Instead, they called character witnesses who testified about his years of service, his dedication, his family, like those things somehow balanced out the violence. Closing arguments came on day 21. Amanda spoke first, walked the jury through every piece of evidence, every victim, every email, every settlement, every lie Sterling Trust had told to protect themselves. "This case isn't complicated," Amanda said. Derek Hansen kicked Jordan Price in the stomach because she asked for banking documents while black. Sterling Trust enabled him because discriminating against customers of color was profitable. And now they want you to believe that Agent Price somehow deserved it, that she should have been more compliant, more deferential, less uppity. But we don't live in a country where you have to earn the right to basic human dignity, where you have to show credentials to be treated with respect, where being kicked in a bank lobby is your fault for not backing down. Derek Hansen is guilty. Philip Warren is guilty. And Sterling Trust is guilty. The evidence proves it. Your conscience knows it. Now it's time to say it. Then Hastings stood up and made one last attempt. "Ladies and gentlemen, what happened to Agent Price was unfortunate. But unfortunate isn't criminal. Derek Hansen made a split-second decision in a tense situation. Was it perfect? No. But he's not on trial for being perfect. He's on trial for being racist. And the government hasn't proven that. They've shown you a pattern of security incidents in a high-crime area. They've shown you a woman who refused to comply with reasonable requests. They've shown you tragedy, but they haven't shown you intent to discriminate. And without intent, there's no crime. Just a terrible mistake that everyone regrets." The jury deliberated for 2 days. Jordan couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, spent 48 hours pacing her apartment while Marcus tried to distract her and failed. On the second day, the call came. Verdict reached. The courtroom was packed. Every seat filled. Overflow in the hallway, news cameras everywhere. Jordan sat at the prosecution table with her hands folded and tried to breathe normally. The jury filed in. Jordan tried to read their faces, tried to find some hint of what was coming, but they gave nothing away. Judge Torres spoke. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreperson stood, a middle-aged Latina woman who'd taken notes throughout the entire trial. "We have your honor. In the matter of United States versus Derek Hansen on the charge of assault on a federal officer, how do you find is guilty?" The courtroom exploded. Jordan felt Marcus grab her hand, felt tears she didn't know she'd been holding back start to fall. "On the charge of deprivation of rights under color of law, guilty. On all counts of assault and battery, guilty on all counts." Jordan couldn't breathe, couldn't process, just sat there while the verdicts kept coming. Philip Warren guilty on all counts. Sterling Trust guilty of conspiracy, guilty of pattern and practice, guilty of everything. Judge Torres banged his gavel over and over trying to restore order, but the courtroom was chaos. People crying, cheering, hugging. Margaret Whitfield in her purple dress standing with her hands raised like she was praising God. And Derek Hansen, sitting at the defense table with his head in his hands, finally understanding that his actions had consequences. Sentencing came 3 weeks later. Derek Hansen got 18 years in federal prison. Philip Warren got 5. Sterling Trust was fined $47 million, placed under federal monitoring for 10 years, and required to implement comprehensive civil rights reforms at every branch. But the real victory came after. The victims who'd been silent for years coming forward. The NDAs being voided across the industry. The banks scrambling to audit their own practices before the DOJ came for them too. The national conversation about discrimination in financial services and who belonged and who was treated like a threat. Jordan stood outside the courthouse after sentencing with Margaret and Dr. Okonkwo and Kevin and Lisa and all the others who'd fought, looked at their faces, saw their tears, their smiles, their exhausted relief. "We did it," Margaret said softly. "We actually did it." And for the first time since Derek Hansen's boot had connected with her stomach, Jordan believed that maybe justice was possible after all. But victory didn't feel the way Jordan had imagined. She thought there would be relief, peace, some sense of closure that would let her finally breathe without pain. Instead, she felt hollow, like she'd poured everything into this fight, and now that it was over, she didn't know what to do with the space it left behind. She went back to work 2 weeks after sentencing. The FBI welcomed her like a hero. People she barely knew stopped her in hallways to shake her hand. Her supervisor called her into his office and told her she was being considered for a commendation, that her actions had brought honor to the Bureau. Jordan sat in that office and felt nothing, just numbness where emotions should have been. "Are you okay?" her supervisor asked. A man named Robert Chen, who'd been with the Bureau for 30 years and had seen enough trauma to recognize it in others. "I'm fine," Jordan said automatically. "Jordan, you were assaulted. You spent 6 months fighting for justice while receiving death threats and media scrutiny. You testified in federal court while your character was attacked. You're not fine." Jordan was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What am I supposed to do with it now? The trial's over. Derek Hansen is in prison. Sterling Trust is under federal monitoring. Justice was served. So why do I still feel like I'm waiting for something else to happen?" Robert leaned back in his chair. "Because trauma doesn't end when the verdict comes in. Because your body remembers even when your mind tries to move forward. Have you talked to anyone? A therapist?" "I don't need therapy. I need to get back to work." "Jordan, I said I'm fine." She wasn't fine. She woke up at 3 a.m. most nights with phantom pain in her ribs, avoided banks even for basic transactions, flinched when she heard boots on marble floors, checked every exit when she entered a room, felt her heart rate spike whenever someone moved too quickly in her peripheral vision. Marcus noticed, started showing up at her apartment with takeout she didn't eat and movies she didn't watch, just sat with her in comfortable silence because he understood that sometimes presence was all you could offer. "You know it's okay to not be okay," Marcus said one night while they sat on her couch pretending to watch a documentary about financial fraud that Jordan couldn't focus on. "Everyone keeps saying that, but what does it actually mean I won? Derek Hansen is in prison. I got justice. So why does it feel like I'm still fighting?" "Because you are still fighting, just a different battle. You were assaulted, Jordan. That doesn't go away just because the perpetrator got convicted. Jordan stared at the TV without seeing it. Claire would know what to say right now. She always knew what to say. What do you think she'd say? Jordan thought about it. Tried to imagine Claire sitting beside her. Claire, who'd been so full of life and conviction and certainty that the world could be better if people just fought hard enough. She'd say that healing doesn't happen on anyone else's timeline, that I need to give myself permission to fall apart, that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about choosing how and when to break in ways that don't destroy you. Marcus nodded. Claire was smart. Yeah, she was. The phone calls started coming in about a month after the trial. Other victims, not from Sterling Trust, from other banks, other institutions, other situations where people of color had been profiled and brutalized and silenced. A woman named Tamika Johnson called from Atlanta. She'd been tackled in a grocery store by security who accused her of shoplifting. She had the receipt in her hand. They tackled her anyway, broke her wrist. The store settled for $40,000 and an NDA. A man named Carlos Rivera called from Phoenix. He'd been stopped by police for driving while brown. They'd searched his car without consent, found nothing because there was nothing to find. He filed a complaint. It went nowhere. A teenager named Maya Chen called from Seattle, 16 years old, followed through a department store by security for 20 minutes. When her mother confronted them, they called the police. Maya was handcuffed in front of her younger siblings while officers searched her backpack for stolen merchandise she didn't have. Jordan listened to each story, documented each one, felt the weight of them settle on her shoulders like stones. You can't save everyone, Marcus said when he found her at her desk at 2 a.m. surrounded by case files and witness statements from people she'd never met. I'm not trying to save everyone. I'm trying to create a system where people don't need saving in the first place. That's a lifetime of work, Jordan. You can't do it alone. Then help me. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, saw the determination that had gotten her through the trial, the same determination that was now driving her towards something bigger, something that wouldn't end with one verdict or one prison sentence. What do you need? He asked. I need to build something. A resource center, legal aid, support for victims who want to break their NDAs but can't afford attorneys. A database of complaints across industries so we can identify patterns. Training programs for security personnel and law enforcement. Everything we wished existed when this happened to me. That's ambitious. It's necessary. Marcus pulled up a chair, opened his laptop. Okay, where do we start? They started with the settlement money. Sterling Trust's $47 million fine had been designated for victim compensation. Jordan worked with Keisha Grant to ensure every victim received payment, not just the 15 who'd testified, everyone who'd ever filed a complaint against Derek Hansen or any other Sterling Trust employee, everyone who'd signed an NDA, everyone who'd been profiled or questioned or brutalized. The checks went out in June. Amounts varied based on severity of harm. Dr. Okonkwo received $200,000. Kevin Washington got $150,000. The teenager who'd been handcuffed got $75,000. Every single person who'd been wronged received something. An acknowledgement, an apology, in the form of financial compensation. But Jordan didn't keep any of it for herself. You're entitled to damages, Keisha said when Jordan told her to redistribute her portion to other victims. You were assaulted. You have medical bills, pain and suffering, lost wages from time off work. I have a salary. I have health insurance. I don't need the money. Other people do. Jordan. I didn't fight for money, Keisha. I fought for accountability. The money means nothing to me compared to knowing Derek Hansen can't hurt anyone else. So her portion, nearly $500,000, went into a fund, the Jordan Price Justice Initiative, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting victims of discrimination in financial services and providing free legal representation for anyone wanting to break an NDA that covered up civil rights violations. The first office opened in September in a renovated community center on the south side. 3 rooms, donated furniture, volunteers who worked for free because they believed in the mission. Jordan spent her weekends there, meeting with victims, connecting them with attorneys, building the database of complaints that would eventually cover 17 different industries and reveal patterns of discrimination so pervasive they couldn't be ignored. Margaret Whitfield volunteered every Tuesday, sat at the front desk, greeting people who walked in scared and ashamed and convinced no one would believe them. She listened to their stories, held their hands, told them about her son and about Jordan and about how fighting back was the only way things ever changed. Dr. Okonkwo donated her time too, provided medical examinations for victims who couldn't afford to document their injuries, wrote reports that would hold up in court, used her expertise to translate trauma into evidence. Trevor Mills became the database coordinator. His attention to detail and his guilt over staying silent for so long made him meticulous about documenting every complaint, every pattern, every connection between seemingly isolated incidents. And slowly, quietly, the initiative grew. More volunteers, more victims coming forward, more cases being built, more NDAs being challenged, more institutions being forced to confront their own complicity. Jordan was working late at the initiative one Tuesday night in October when someone knocked on the door. She almost didn't answer. They were closed. The lights were off except for her desk lamp, but something made her look. A young woman stood outside, early 20s, Latina, holding a folder against her chest like a shield. Jordan recognized that posture, the way victims held themselves when they were working up courage to speak. She opened the door. "We're closed, but I can stay if you need to talk." The woman stepped inside. Her hands were shaking. "My name is Sophia Reyes. I was assaulted by a bank security guard 3 months ago. I signed an NDA, took the money, tried to forget about it, but then I saw you on the news, watched the trial, and I realized I can't stay quiet, not when I know he's still there, still hurting people." Jordan gestured to a chair. "Tell me everything." Sophia's story was familiar in the worst way. She'd gone to Pacific Coast Bank to deposit her student loan refund. The security guard, a man named Thomas Brennan, had questioned her, asked where the money came from, suggested it looked suspicious. When she'd refused to explain beyond what was legally required, he'd grabbed her, pushed her against the wall, called her an illegal and told her to go back where she came from. She was born in San Diego, had lived in California her entire life, had every right to be there. Pacific Coast Bank settled for $35,000, made her sign an NDA, told her fighting would ruin her credit, destroy her future, make her unemployable. "I believed them," Sophia said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I was 21. I had student loans. I needed the money, so I signed. And I've regretted it every single day since." Jordan pulled out an intake form, started documenting. "How many other victims do you think there are?" "I don't know, but Thomas Brennan is still working there, still wearing that uniform, still treating customers like criminals. If I don't speak up, who will?" "You'll need an attorney. The NDA has language about financial penalties if you breach it." "I know. That's why I'm here. I heard you help people break them." Jordan nodded. "We do, and I promise you, you won't fight alone." They filed the lawsuit against Pacific Coast Bank the following week. Sophia Reyes versus Pacific Coast Bank, alleging assault, battery, discrimination, and demanding the NDA be voided as against public policy. The bank's lawyers responded aggressively, threatened Sophia with countersuits, with financial ruin, with criminal charges for breach of contract. Jordan responded by going public, held a press conference on the courthouse steps with Sophia beside her, told the media exactly what Pacific Coast Bank was doing, how they were using NDAs to silence victims and protect violent employees. "Sophia Reyes is 24 years old," Jordan said into the microphone while cameras rolled. "She's a college student working 2 jobs to pay off her loans. And Pacific Coast Bank is threatening to sue her into bankruptcy because she dared to speak up about being assaulted in their lobby. This is why victims stay silent. This is why NDAs are so dangerous, because corporations use them as weapons, and we're not letting that happen anymore." The backlash was swift. Pacific Coast Bank's stock dropped. Customers started pulling accounts. Protesters showed up at branches. Within a week, the bank's legal team reached out to negotiate. They offered to void the NDA, offered an additional settlement, offered a public apology. All Sophia had to do was drop the lawsuit and promise not to pursue criminal charges against Thomas Brennan. Sophia looked at Jordan during the negotiation meeting. "What do you think I should do?" Jordan thought about Derek Hansen in prison, about the 18 years he'd never get back, about every victim who'd accepted a settlement and watched their abuser walk free. "I think you should ask yourself what justice looks like for you. Is it money? Is it an apology? Or is it making sure Thomas Brennan can't hurt anyone else?" Sophia was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at Pacific Coast Bank's attorney. "I want him fired. I want his personnel file made public. I want every complaint that was filed against him released. And I want a federal investigation into whether this is a pattern like it was at Sterling Trust." The attorney went pale. "That's not on the table." "Then neither am I," Sophia said. "See you in court." They went to court. The trial was faster than Jordan's had been, only 2 weeks. But the verdict was the same, guilty on all counts. Thomas Brennan fired and charged with assault. Pacific Coast Bank placed under federal monitoring, $53 million fine. And suddenly Jordan's case wasn't isolated anymore. It was a movement. Banks across the country started auditing their own practices. Security companies began implementing new training. The DOJ opened investigations into 17 different financial institutions. NDAs covering civil rights violations were being challenged in courts from California to New York. The Jordan Price Justice Initiative expanded, opened a second office in Los Angeles, then a third in Atlanta, then offices in 12 cities, each one staffed by volunteers and attorneys who worked pro bono because they believed victims deserved better than silence. Jordan traveled between offices, met with victims, built cases, testified at trials, gave speeches at universities and conferences, and anywhere people would listen about the importance of fighting back, of refusing to let fear or money or intimidation silence the truth. She was exhausted, running on coffee and adrenaline and the momentum of a movement that had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. But she couldn't stop. Every time she thought about slowing down, another victim would call. Another story would emerge. Another person would need help fighting an institution that had hurt them and expected them to stay quiet. Marcus worried, started showing up at her hotel rooms in whatever city she was visiting to make sure she was eating, sleeping, taking care of herself in the most basic ways. "You're burning out," he said one night in Houston where Jordan was preparing for another trial. "You can't sustain this pace. People are counting on me. And they'll still count on you after you take a break. Jordan, you're no good to anyone if you collapse." "I'm fine. You said that a year ago, and you weren't fine then either." Jordan stopped packing her briefcase, looked at Marcus, really looked at him, saw the concern in his eyes, the fear, the love of a friend who'd watched her survive assault and trial and media scrutiny and was now watching her slowly destroy herself through work. "I don't know how to stop," she said quietly. "Every time I close my eyes, I see their faces, all the victims who called, who trusted me, who broke their NDAs because I told them it would matter. If I stop now, what does that say to them? It says you're human. It says you gave everything you had, and now you need to refill the well. Jordan Clare wouldn't want this. She wouldn't want you sacrificing your health and happiness and peace of mind for a cause that's bigger than any one person can carry alone." Jordan felt something crack. Something she'd been holding together through sheer force of will. "Claire's dead, Marcus. She's been dead for 4 years. And I don't get to ask her what she'd want, because a hit-and-run driver took that choice away from me. So all I can do is work. All I can do is fight. Because if I stop, if I let myself feel everything I've been pushing down, I don't know if I'll survive it." The admission hung between them, raw, honest. The truth Jordan had been avoiding since the day Derek Hansen kicked her. Marcus crossed the room, pulled her into a hug, let her cry against his shoulder for the first time since Claire's funeral. Let her break in a way she hadn't allowed herself to break during the trial, or the investigation, or any of the hundreds of hours she'd spent being strong for other people. When the tears finally stopped, Marcus said, "You need help, professional help, not from me, not from the victims, from someone trained to help you process trauma." Jordan nodded against his shoulder. Okay. I'll find a therapist. I'll take weekends off. I'll let other people carry some of this weight. But I'm not stopping the work. I can't. I'm not asking you to stop. I'm asking you to survive it. Jordan started therapy the following month. A woman named Dr. Lisa Morrison, who specialized in trauma and PTSD and understood what it meant to survive violence and then have to relive it over and over in service of justice. The first session was hard. Dr. Morrison asked Jordan to describe what happened. Not the sanitized version she'd given in depositions, the real version. What it felt like when Derek Hansen's boot connected, what she'd thought about while lying on that marble floor, what she'd been afraid of. "I was afraid I'd die," Jordan said. Not from the kick itself, but from what would come after. That Derek Hansen would keep escalating, that he'd pull his weapon, that I'd become another statistic, another black person killed for asking questions. And I was afraid that even if I survived, no one would believe me, that it would be my word against his, that the badge in my purse would never fall out, and I'd just be another victim silenced by an NDA. "But the badge did fall out," Dr. Morrison said gently, "and you did survive, and people did believe you. So why are you still afraid?" Jordan was quiet for a long time. Then, because it could happen again, because there are thousands of Derek Hansens out there, millions maybe, and I can't stop all of them, can't save everyone, can't fix a system that's been broken for centuries. So what's the point? The point is that you saved the people you could save. You gave them permission to fight. You showed them that silence isn't the only option. That's not nothing, Jordan. That's everything. The therapy helped. Slowly, gradually. Jordan started sleeping better, started eating regularly, started allowing herself moments of joy that weren't tied to work or justice or the next case. She went to Margaret Whitfield's 75th birthday party and laughed at stories about Margaret's grandchildren, went to dinner with Dr. Okonkwo and talked about books and movies instead of lawsuits and depositions, took a weekend trip with Marcus to a cabin in Wisconsin where there was no internet and no phones and no cases to review. And slowly, carefully, Jordan started to heal. But the work continued. The initiative kept growing. More offices, more volunteers, more cases. The database now contained over 3,000 documented complaints across 47 different industries. Patterns emerged. Security companies that trained guards to profile, retail chains that targeted shoppers of color, banks that denied loans based on zip codes, schools that suspended black students at rates 5 times higher than white students for identical infractions. Every pattern was evidence. Every complaint was data. Every victim who came forward was another piece of a puzzle that revealed systematic discrimination so pervasive it had been invisible, until Jordan and her team made it visible. 2 years after the Sterling Trust trial, Jordan was invited to speak at the Congressional Black Caucus. She stood at a podium in front of legislators and advocates and told them what she'd learned. Discrimination thrives in silence. It depends on victims being too scared or too tired or too poor to fight back. It depends on NDAs that turn justice into a commodity you can buy. It depends on institutions prioritizing their reputation over people's lives. But we can change that. We can make NDAs unenforceable in civil rights cases. We can require public disclosure of settlement amounts. We can create independent oversight boards for security personnel. We can fund legal aid for victims who want to fight but can't afford attorneys. We can build a system where accountability is the default instead of the exception. But it requires political will. It requires courage. It requires choosing justice over comfort. And I'm asking you to make that choice. The legislation passed 6 months later, the Justice Accountability and Transparency Act. It made NDAs covering civil rights violations unenforceable, required public disclosure of all settlement agreements over $10,000, created federal funding for legal aid organizations supporting discrimination victims, mandated independent oversight for security personnel in financial institutions. Jordan watched the president sign it into law from the gallery, stood beside Margaret and Dr. Okonkwo and Sophia and all the other victims who'd fought, who'd testified, who'd refused to stay silent even when staying silent would have been easier. "We did it," Margaret whispered. "We actually changed the law." Jordan felt Claire's wedding ring on her finger. the weight of it familiar and grounding. She thought about what Claire would say if she could see this moment. Would probably say something about how this was just the beginning, how laws don't mean anything without enforcement, how the real work was making sure the legislation translated into actual change. Claire would be right. Laws were just words on paper until people made them matter. But for now, in this moment, Jordan let herself feel something she hadn't felt in 4 years, something that felt suspiciously like hope. 3 years after Derek Hansen was sentenced, Jordan visited him in federal prison. She hadn't planned to, hadn't wanted to give him the satisfaction of knowing she was still thinking about him. But Dr. Morrison suggested it might provide closure, a way to take back power by confronting him on her terms instead of his. The visiting room was gray and cold, metal tables bolted to the floor, guards watching from corners. Derek Hansen sat across from her in an orange jumpsuit, looking older than she remembered. Grayer, smaller somehow. Prison had diminished him in ways Jordan hadn't expected. "Agent Price," he said. His voice was flat, defeated. "I'm not here as an agent," Jordan said. "I'm here as the woman you kicked in the stomach 3 years ago." Hansen looked down at his hands. "I know why you're here. You want me to apologize. Say I'm sorry. That I was wrong." "No," Jordan said. "I don't need your apology. I don't need your remorse. I'm here to tell you that everything you tried to take from me that day, you failed. You tried to make me feel small, feel scared, feel like I didn't belong, and for a moment you succeeded. But then I stood up, and I fought back, and I won. You're in here. I'm out there changing laws and helping victims and making sure men like you face consequences. So I wanted you to see me, healthy, successful, free. I wanted you to understand that you didn't break me. You just showed me what I was capable of surviving." Hansen was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if your badge hadn't fallen out?" Jordan had thought about it. Many times. Late at night when sleep wouldn't come. During therapy sessions when Dr. Morrison asked hard questions. While reviewing cases from victims who didn't have badges, who weren't federal agents, who were just regular people trying to live their lives. "Yes," Jordan said. "I think I would have been just another victim silenced by an NDA, just another name in a settlement agreement, just another person you brutalized who disappeared into paperwork while you moved on to your next target. That's what makes me angriest. Not what you did to me, what you did to all the others, the ones who didn't have resources or platforms or badges, the ones who took your abuse and your employer's money and stayed quiet because that's what they were told to do." "I'm sorry," Hansen said quietly. "I don't forgive you," Jordan replied. "And I don't need to. Forgiveness is for people who deserve it, who've earned it through genuine remorse and changed behavior. You're just sorry you got caught. Sorry you're in prison. Sorry your actions had consequences. That's not the same thing." She stood up, prepared to leave. But Hansen spoke again. "Was it worth it? Everything you went through? The trial, the media, the death threats, all of it. Was bringing me down worth the price you paid?" Jordan thought about the initiative, about the victims she'd helped, about the laws that had changed, about Sophia and Tamika and Carlos and Maya and hundreds of others who'd found the courage to speak because she'd spoken first, about Margaret Whitfield finally getting to see someone held accountable even if it couldn't be the officers who'd killed her son, about the system that was slowly, painfully beginning to change because people refused to stay silent anymore. "Yes," Jordan said. "It was worth every second." She walked out of that prison and didn't look back, drove to the cemetery where Claire was buried, stood at the headstone she visited too infrequently because work and cases and saving the world kept getting in the way. "I did it, baby," Jordan said to the stone, to the memory. To the woman she'd loved, who'd believed that fighting for justice mattered, even when it hurt. "I fought back, and I won, and I built something that's going to keep fighting long after I'm gone. I hope that makes you proud." The wind picked up, rustled leaves, carried the scent of rain that was coming. Jordan stood there for a long time, not crying, not grieving, just being present with the ghost of the woman who'd taught her that courage wasn't about never being afraid. It was about being afraid and fighting anyway. Then she drove to the initiative's main office, walked in to find it bustling with activity, volunteers answering phones, attorneys reviewing cases, victims telling their stories to people who believed them. Margaret at the front desk greeting everyone with warmth and wisdom. Dr. Okonkwo in a back room conducting medical examinations. Trevor updating the database with new complaints. Marcus looked up from where he was working at Jordan's desk. "How'd it go?" "It went," Jordan said. "I told him he didn't break me, that I won. That was enough." Marcus nodded. "Understood without her having to explain. New case came in while you were gone. Woman in Miami. Assaulted by hotel security. They're offering her $75,000 and an NDA. She wants to fight." Jordan felt that familiar pull, that sense of purpose, that understanding that the work was never truly done. There would always be another victim, another abuser, another institution that needed to be held accountable. But she also felt something else, balance, the knowledge that she could fight without destroying herself, could carry this weight without being crushed by it, could be both the warrior and the person who needed rest. "Set up a call for tomorrow," Jordan said. "Tonight, I'm going to Dr. Morrison's office. Then I'm going home. I'm going to cook actual food, watch a movie that has nothing to do with civil rights or justice or lawsuits. And I'm going to sleep for 8 hours. Tomorrow I'll fight, but tonight, I'm going to live." Marcus smiled. Claire would approve. "Yeah," Jordan said softly. She would. 5 years after Derek Hansen kicked her in the stomach, Jordan stood in front of a crowd of 3,000 people at the National Civil Rights Museum. She'd been invited to give the keynote speech at their annual conference. The topic, from victim to victor building movements through personal courage. She looked out at all those faces, activists and attorneys and victims and advocates, people who dedicated their lives to fighting the same fights she'd been fighting, who understood that justice wasn't a single moment. It was a lifetime of moments, 1,000 small battles that added up to change. "My name is Jordan Claire Price," she began. "And 5 years ago, a bank security guard kicked me in the stomach for asking questions while black. That kick changed my life. Not because of the physical pain, though, that was real. Not because of the trial, though, that was brutal. But because it showed me what happens when we refuse to stay silent, when we fight back, when we choose courage over comfort." She told her story. Not the sanitized version, the real one. The fear and the pain and the doubt. The nights she'd wanted to give up. The moments she'd wondered if fighting was worth it. The therapy and the healing and the slow understanding that survival wasn't just about winning in court. It was about reclaiming your life after violence tried to take it. "I don't tell you this to make you feel sorry for me," Jordan said. "I tell you this because every single person in this room has a story like mine. Maybe it wasn't a bank lobby. Maybe it was a traffic stop or a store or a workplace or a school. Maybe it was subtle discrimination instead of overt violence. But all of us know what it feels like to be treated as less than, to be profiled, to be silenced, to be told that fighting back will only make things worse." She paused. Let that truth settle. "And I'm here to tell you that they're wrong. Fighting back does make things better. Not immediately, not easily, not without cost. But it makes things better, because every time someone speaks up, it gives permission for others to speak up. Every time someone breaks an NDA, it weakens the power of NDAs. Every time someone demands accountability, it makes accountability more possible. We change systems one courageous act at a time, one lawsuit, one protest, one conversation, one refusal to accept that this is just how things are." The crowd erupted in applause. Jordan waited for them to quiet. "Derek Hansen is in prison. Sterling Trust is under federal monitoring. The laws have changed. The Jordan Price Justice Initiative has helped over 2,000 victims fight back, and none of that would have happened if I'd taken the settlement and stayed quiet. None of it would have happened if Dr. Patricia Okonkwo and Kevin Washington and Lisa Rodriguez and 15 others hadn't broken their NDAs. None of it would have happened if Trevor Mills hadn't documented everything despite being terrified of losing his job. None of it would have happened if Margaret Whitfield hadn't picked up that badge and said, "Oh my God, she's FBI." She looked directly at Margaret in the front row, the woman who'd started this whole thing by refusing to look away. "We did this together, and that's how we'll keep doing it, together, supporting each other, believing each other, fighting for each other, until the system changes or we tear it down and build something better. That's the promise I'm making. That's the work I'm committed to. And I hope you'll join me." The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes, people crying and cheering and chanting her name. But Jordan wasn't thinking about fame or recognition or being a symbol. She was thinking about the woman in Miami who'd called yesterday, the teenager in Portland who'd broken her NDA last week, the man in Chicago who was finally ready to file charges after 3 years of silence, all the people who were finding their courage because someone else had found theirs first. That was the real victory, not Derek Hansen in prison, not the laws that had changed, not the money or the settlements or the federal investigations. The real victory was a movement of people who refused to stay silent, who chose justice over comfort, who understood that fighting back was the only way forward. And as Jordan walked off that stage to thunderous applause, she felt Claire's presence, not as grief anymore, but as gratitude, for the years they'd had, for the love they'd shared, for the lesson Claire had taught her about what mattered. Justice, real justice, the kind that required sacrifice but changed everything. Jordan had paid the price, had survived the assault and the trial and the trauma and the years of fighting that followed, and she'd do it all again in a heartbeat, because that's what you did when you believed in something, when you loved people enough to fight for them, when you understood that your comfort mattered less than their freedom. You fought, every day, in every way you could, until the world was different, until justice was real, until everyone could walk into a bank lobby and be treated like they belonged. That was the promise Jordan had made, to Claire, to herself, to every victim who'd trusted her with their story, and it was a promise she intended to keep.